across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
OK, well, this is The Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould, and our guest co-host this evening is David Starkey. Get your calls into him, 0344 499 1000. I'm not going to muck about. I'm going to go straight into the show, and I'm going to say, are we a country, a nation of benefit scroungers? We've now got 1 million people on benefits, and 40% of young people, I think this is partly related to mental health problems as a result of the COVID lockdown, but you may disagree with me, but 40% of Gen Z want to quit work as a result of mental health. Now, I just pulled up some statistics, and I don't want to have a go at any one particular group, but let's just say the following. You are not going to believe this. Talk about our wealth being enriched. Since the mid-2000s, over 95% of Somali immigrants to the UK have lived in rented accommodation, about 80% in social housing. Currently, the number of Somali immigrants to the UK who are living in social housing is 72%. That statistic is for England and Wales, and 47.1% of them are on benefits. So that means half of all people who've come over as migrants from Somalia to do the jobs we didn't want to do, did the job of going on benefits. David Starkey, your response?
Well, I think you've, in one sense, said all there is to say. But
thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I thought I'd, rather than just gabbling, as you tend to, I would be commendably brief. But no, you've left out one even bigger thing. It's London.
Yes.
If you actually look at the map of London, social housing in London is immensely valuable.
Yes.
It's in the absolute central postcodes, and the overwhelming mass of it is held by foreigners.
Yes.
Or second generation. Now, this is completely atypical of Europe. If you look in Paris and whatever, you don't get anything like that pattern at all. So the immense distortion of who can live in central London is very largely due to this. It means that an enormous percentage of property that would otherwise be available to rent for those who are working in the city.
Yes.
It means they are then thrust out into zones 2, 3,
You couldn't dream of living, if you're born here, of living in the city.
In zone 1.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
A huge part of a very large part of the housing stock where I live, Bloomsbury, Covent Garden, a surprisingly large part of the housing stock is public sector, is rental. They took over. Camden Council took over old mansion blocks and whatever. These are hugely valuable properties, and they're lived in by people who aren't working.
You don't necessarily notice it. So, I mean, look, in reality, you've been, I mean, I don't want to go over the top, you've been a TV star for 20 or 30 years, whatever it is. One would expect you to have a flat in central London, particularly close to the University of London, and all that jazz. But actually, it's when you start digging into places like that, you realise how few British people live there. I remember there's a place, you may not know it, on Charing Cross Road, where there is the distribution place for all the rubbish. Then there's a load of shops, and above it is something called Vale Royal House, next to Limelight Club. The reason I make this point is because if you walk through Chinatown in Soho or whatever, you won't notice these little doors that lead upstairs to entire streets. And I guarantee you, there are no white people living in any of them. It's unbelievable.
But I think it brings about an extraordinary distortion of the city.
Yes.
One of the things, again, that's very striking and astonished me, I've recently moved into that area, is that these supermarkets cater to the poor.
Yes.
It is you would expect, you're surrounded by Georgian squares.
Yes, of course.
And yet, the whole orientation of the obviously they know what their market is. Now, it's partly students, but it's much more what we're talking about.
And they've got it for life, these council
That is right. And it will circulate within families. And so we've brought about a complete distortion of the population.
It's sad, actually, because I used to live on when I first was a House of Commons intern. God, I'm just going to go through all those housing developments of London. I used to live on the China Walk Council estate next to Lambeth Palace. And, I had a friend of mine, I won't say who it was because he's on the telly, he said, what annoys me is the way the unemployed are conveniently located close to all the shops and businesses and whatever, whereas people who've got actual jobs have to commute in.
And
what you do, you are taking a train past people in bed.
They've got more disposable income a lot of the time.
I mean, we've got a structure of welfare and distribution of public sector housing which is simply deranged.
Yeah.
It's happened and nobody has thought of it. Again, the whole function of giving people priority in accordance with points, which automatically means that, as it were, those who are destitute, because they are when they land here, immediately go to the top of the
That's
queue.
right.
And this is mad.
And you get it for life. I remember Bob
It
Crow
is
was on 150 grand and he had a beautiful council house and he was paying hardly anything.
So do many trade union leaders.
Yeah.
But it is demented. And what I'm really struck by, much though I detest this government, the situation that it's finding itself in is actually starting to force it to think. It's doing it very reluctantly. The whole bias of the Labour Party is it is the welfare party. It pretends to be the party of work.
Yes.
But in fact, it's the party of state
Claimer,
welfare. It's
not
the
Labour.
party of state welfare. You will remember way back in the 1940s, Herbert Morrison, who is he grandfather? I think
Of
he's
Mandelson.
grandfather Peter Mandelson, famously says, "We're going to build the Conservatives out of London."
And he
in
succeeded.
other words, the deliberate creation of council houses. But now the ethnic composition has changed wildly. The old whites have moved out to new towns
Yep.
and that sort of thing. The further East End and whatever, South Essex, all the rest of it, and the new groups have moved in.
It's going to fall apart, isn't it? It's going to end up like the early 70s where, I know one of the trade unions, I think the railway, they're asking to be prioritised on social housing, and eventually, like you say, just economics is going to make it crash down, hopefully, at some point. I
think that the risk is that the entire economy crashes. But I mean, just quickly to wander away from the point of we're supposed really not just to be talking about immigrants, and the question of welfare benefits is much
One in
bigger.
5 of working age people are on benefits. Not working.
It's the other way around, as it were. A fifth of yes. There's right. We've got. Sorry, but we need to clarify that statistic. Remember, that is also the intention of universal credit. We now have the situation that welfare actually subsidises low wages.
Yes,
and discourages work.
Sorry, what? Right, let me be historical now here. Back in 1835, there was the great revision of the then Poor Law, because they were having exactly these problems that we're talking about now.
Why?
For the simple reason that employers were using poor rates.
Oh, I thought you meant immigration. I do apologise.
No, not immigration. Just returning now from the aspect of immigration to the whole business, the much broader question of welfare.
Yes.
And employers were deliberately using, because they could control it, particularly with farmers, they were using poor rates to subsidise non-subsistence wages for their employees. This, it was called the Speenham land system. This was deliberately abolished, and at the same time in 1835 you introduced this rule which I think we're going to have to bring back. It's called less eligibility. That should be that nobody on benefits receives more than the necessary subsistence.
They made it the average wage a few years ago, didn't they? But it hasn't stayed like that.
When I did this in
and also remember, we're doing something else at the same time. We're constantly increasing the minimum wage. In other words, we are now, I think, at the point where quite clearly we're paying people more in the minimum wage than their job is actually worth, which is, again, I was wanting to make the bigger point. This government is now turning into an absolute bundle of contradictions. It was beautifully put, and the weird state of our politics was beautifully put by Tim Stanley when he said, vote Conservative and get increased taxes, vote Labour and get welfare cuts. Our politics is standing on the head.
So do you mind if I'm just really specific about this?
Yeah.
Because it's something that I think is going to be controversial, perhaps not with this audience, but when I did a social policy segment at university, and they were talking about dignity in poverty, and they were saying that, look, if the average person in Britain gets to go on a holiday to Tenerife, then people on benefits should get to go on a holiday in Tenerife. If the average person can have a beef roast on a Sunday, maybe a little bit old-fashioned, but then somebody on benefits should have it. What you are saying, and by the way, I don't disagree with you, what you are saying is, in order to push people off benefits, the job of the welfare system will be to keep you alive, keep a house over your head, keep you in clothing, but there will be no luxury at all.
That is my view of what it should be.
Yes.
And again, what we've done, we've made it a viable lifestyle choice.
Yes.
A preferable one. People on the dole will go on 4 holidays a year. They'll get a car. I know someone who was diagnosed with cancer, and she got an Audi, you know, and she said she didn't need it, but they go, oh no, you're entitled
renewed
to
every 3 years.
Free tyres, free servicing.
With Motability, the chief executive of which is paid, I think, £600,000 a year.
Crazy.
About 1 in 8 cars or something.
A quasi-charity. We're just being taken for a ride.
But someone's making money from those car
Of course
sales.
they
This
are.
is where it all stems from, doesn't it?
And again, there is again a derangement of the state. You get the car is exempt from VAT. The car is freely insured.
You don't pay in the Dartford crossing. We had someone call who just bought one of those cars.
All of that.
Yeah.
And
free tyres from Quick Fit and everything.
But these are, and it's renewed every 3 years.
Yeah.
How many ordinary people renew an expensive car every 3
They
years?
live a better life, don't they?
Can I give you a shock? I never knew.
Very difficult. Very, very difficult.
I never knew the reason why I was a bit out there and whatever was apparently I've got this ADHD thing, right? Which in my day...
Didn't you realise?
No.
Oh, no.
Get a car, man. Go and get yourself an Audi. Yeah.
Right, I've not done it because I don't want to be hypocritical, but I'm entitled to a servant paid £6,000 a year to be my carer.
What is that?
Yeah, where's my £6,000, man?
I've got to say, he's not paid quite as much as that.
I'm entitled to have a servant. Right now, okay, you can
No,
call it a
it's called a
carer,
carer.
but it's a
It's
servant.
called a carer.
I mean, do you think about it? For what? For £6,000 a year, you know, I could have somebody come in for a few hours a day, make my dinner, clean the place, wash my underpants. Do you know what I mean? I mean, maybe they might need danger pay.
I mean, more than £6,000 for that.
But the point is this: I apparently have a mental illness or whatever it is. I didn't even realise. Right?
We could have all told you
and
that.
Yet, so I've got a postgraduate from the University of London. I've got a job doing this. I think I do pretty well for myself. You know, what would have happened if I'd have just taken the carer and just been and said, well, you know what, I've got a mental health problem. I'm not what I thought I was, a bit of a loony and don't care. Now it's diagnosable. I have to. What would have happened to me if I'd have done all that? I think I'd have been on the scrap heap, drinking special brew and eating pizzas.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of people
That's
are.
what you do anyway, but I mean, no, exactly, that's what's
Usually
happening.
Champagne.
Well, yeah, all right.
Get it right.
But the example was ADHD getting yourself a brand new Mercedes. I haven't done it, but by God, David, I was tempted.
You can do
But
it.
just to pause, what are we actually saying about the gross malfunction of our society? These constantly increasing tax and getting less and less for it, as far as the person in work, the person holding down a job, the person trying to raise a family. And there is, I think, this burning sense of resentment.
That's why people aren't having families, I think.
It may be one of the reasons.
I mean, it's amazing to think when people say, well, I can only have one child because I can't get a big enough flat, and then somebody gets off the coach at Victoria train station. And in one case, I felt sorry for Westminster City Council. They were virtually in tears. They had a Somalian family with, I think, 8 to 10 children, and because they'd presented themselves at Victoria Station, which is in Belgravia, not quite, but almost, they had to rent a 6-bedroom house in Belgravia for this Somalian family.
Which is a luxury house, because you don't get 6-bedroom houses in Belgravia that aren't luxury, so they're very high-end.
They were spent, I mean, I don't know what they spent on the place, but the house was worth something like 10 to 15 million pounds. Westminster Council were crying.
They were getting £2-3 million houses, some people.
But it is deranged. But again, we've just let this happen.
Yes.
It has grown like Topsy. Nobody has thought about it. There have been attempts at reform. They've all been given up. The latest attempt at reform is being aborted because the Labour backbenches are rebelling.
Yes.
Diane Abbott is striking postures.
Which is an unpleasant thought.
Which is a terrifying thought. Labour councillors are resigning.
And you get generation following their previous generation. It's now a family thing. It's just going on and on and on.
Well, you've said on previous shows about this idea of the tribal area where people are being moved in, and you
but also British people, it's going generation.
You made a brilliant point, which it never crossed my mind, that in reality, the whole arranged marriage thing, the reason these young Pakistani and Bangladeshi girls are marrying their first cousin has got nothing to do with deliberately finding them an abusive partner. That is the next young man in the village that needs to be transported over. And the purpose of these young girls is to constantly be transporting people over. And you disparagingly said the British royal family did the same thing.
Well, indeed they did. Well, and which also kept them foreign. I mean, the reason that the British royal family were essentially German-speaking until the beginning of the 20th century was every generation they married back into Germany, because the house rules of the House of Hanover required them to do that, and it's a very, very similar phenomenon. So again, the constant marrying back into Bangladesh or back into Pakistan means these people can never fully assimilate.
No,
it keeps a pattern of loyalties. But we're wandering away, aren't we, from that really big question of welfare, and it's wrong to identify it simply with immigration.
Yes,
a huge part of the native population, and what's particularly terrifying are two things: the number of young people who are proceeding directly from education into welfare, and the fact that at every level, young, old, whatever, the figures are going up and up and up. And there's been this extraordinary acceleration since COVID.
It can't go on.
And quite simply, we are confronting the fact that the state is going to collapse. We are borrowing larger and larger sums of money. We're running a constant deficit.
£100 billion a year, just interest we're paying.
The interest rate is 100.
But what happened?
Billion a year.
100 billion.
But what happens to...
sorry, and at the same time, the thing we're trapped now with higher interest rates. The Bank of England has just taken the decision not to reduce interest rates because, of course, two things have happened. Again, I'm pointing out a government that's at absolute war with itself. What does Rachel Reeves do? She actually throws huge amounts of money at the public sector. Really very large single wage increases. They go straight into the economy and send inflation up, whereupon government borrowing costs go up, and the whole thing is now a vicious cycle. We borrow more and pay more.
When will it break?
But can I ask you this, because we're going to go to a break and people are going to take calls on, I'll give you calls on all this. I just want to ask you this question. Is this potentially linked to young people giving up on their own lives? Because from what I can see, I imagine that the three of us kind of did a fairly similar thing in that you tried your best at school. Some people were better than others. And then, you aspired to go to university. Certainly I did, went along, tried to get a decent job. Now people seem to aspire to get their phones out and film themselves borrowing their mate's Lamborghini.
But we could buy a flat or a house. You can't really do that.
It just strikes me that real life has been exchanged for making a mockumentary about your life. And do you know what I mean?
Everybody aspires to be you.
True, we all get...
All right, well, I've put that to David. We're going to be taking your calls just in a couple of moments. Get out of this.
Terrible role model.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Do you know what? It's even fascinating talking to Dr. David Starkey, CBE, during the break, where we're talking about the independent economies of smaller towns and cities. But anyway, what about this question of 40% of Gen Z giving up and wanting to go on benefits?
Gen Z.
I don't really know them very well, oddly enough. You're speaking to an 18-year-old, and there's an 80-year-old, and there's nothing worse than that sort of patronage. I suppose you said something very interesting, that life is, to a large extent, now lived in an imaginary way. And,
Yes.
and remember, right at the beginning of our culture, with Plato in the Republic, he imagined the myth of the cave. He had a world in which people lived strapped into seats, watching shadows made by fires, in other words, which they thought were reality. And what we've done with the internet is to replicate Plato's cave, this
Well, you're never bored, are you? Like when we were younger.
An imaginary world. Well, I mean, what it is it's continuous, trivial excitement.
Dopamine hits, tiny little dopamine hits.
Tiny little jabs of something amusing. Watching a dog doing something
But people
funny. Watching a crocodile
People
trying to
can't
eat something or
concentrate
another.
for more than a few seconds, and then they're on the next thing.
And it is alleged that that's the case. It's a very, very different experience from reading a book. There's also something else which we really do need to be honest about, don't we? So many jobs really aren't very different. Spending your time looking at a computer screen.
And they don't pay well, to be honest.
Writing dreary emails, which generally speaking you're not allowed to draft, you're not allowed to exercise your brain. I mean, one of the desperate things that's gone wrong, I think, is that we have deliberately reduced the intellectual content of jobs. That more and more people are doing, they're following minutely determined procedures. I mean, again, we're shifting an awful lot
That's
of
going to
ground
get worse with AI, though, as well.
It may, except the AI will do it, presumably. But the thing that's really terrifying, everybody asks, why is the public sector so awful? It is because everything has become a complex, predetermined process, a predetermined procedure in which nobody exercises any intelligence.
You know, you're so right. I remember I worked for a council, and I looked at this letter, and it said, "Dear residents, as you know, as part of our strategy to improve our green credentials, going forward, we will be minimising," and it went on and on and on like this. And I said,
in this non-language
exactly
that nobody ever speaks.
I said to him, we're giving you M&S vouchers the more you recycle. Yes, well, that's in the letter. Yes, but it's paragraph 15, right? The reality is, it should have said, "Dear resident, from now on, the more you put in your recycling, the more M&S vouchers you will get. Here is how they will be sent to you."
We used to have a plain English society.
Oh, what happened to them?
Trevor McDonald, I remember, he ran it.
Presumably got drowned in paperwork.
But now there's no responsibility, is there?
You think I am joking? The government has claimed that it is actually reducing the number of quangos and the amount of indirect institutions. It has actually created a quango to reduce the number of quangos.
Yeah, and they've gone up by 27, I think.
They've created another 27 and they've abolished one. Do you know how many there are?
I think it's 600, isn't it?
The general reckoning is before this lot, the 27 or 28 or whatever it was that the government has created, it was 444. So we're now something under 500.
But it depends with the lack of proper things like LEA governors. You could argue that every school has become a quango, because now what you've got is these experts, trade unionists and whatever.
But anyway, can we go back to the point about jobs?
Yes.
And it seems to me that we have replaced, in many ways, recognisable activity that has got a decent, sensible output with merely paper churning, or rather, not even paper churning, screen churning.
Yeah.
How on earth can one feel that that's worth doing?
Yes.
And I think, again, we are going to need to think very hard about
Can I give you an example of this? I work with AI all the time because I have a YouTube channel, and basically the YouTube moderators principally rely on AI. Now, they cannot work out the difference between me saying, Shamima Begum should not be allowed back to the UK because she's a terrorist, and their prohibition of videos that talk about terrorism, right? And I'm saying, no, you have to understand, your prohibition of talking about terrorism is gratuitous information about bombs going off. Whether a terrorist...
It's promoting terrorism,
exactly.
yeah.
And I kept asking them, do you understand the difference between talking about a terrorist and talking about terrorism? And you kept continually getting this computer says no response. Which,
presumably, this is why people put asterisks in place.
Exactly right.
Vowels. And it is, but once again, there is a silliness of all of this. I mean, I had an extraordinary case this morning of, and it's not just the public sector, it's invaded huge parts of the private sector too. A wonderful story, and I better not be too specific, otherwise it will be identifiable, of somebody who was a taxi driver and was driving me, and there was a phone call coming through on the car. Normally he cuts them off. It then turned out that he was being rung by his insurance company. Yeah. He had had a tiny little bump at the back, but unfortunately the car behind, because it was a flimsy thing which had rear-ended him, had been quite badly damaged, and therefore it was a matter of insurance. Because it was a matter of insurance, this tiny little scratch had to be repaired. To repair it involved removing the bumper. To do this was going to take a week, and because it was a taxi, it had to have, of course, a substitute car. But if it's a vehicle for hire, it costs £400 a day.
Wow.
Why are car insurance policies so huge? Now, if somebody had applied their brain,
they'd have gone, don't bother.
But someone's making big money on that.
They would have said,
that's what
don't
happens.
bother. But instead, there will be a procedure. There will no doubt, I'm sure, be a regulatory body which says you must do this. I mean, let me continue these examples. I mean, we're asking why people don't want to do things. My doctor's surgery in the country has this extraordinary thing called a prescriptions officer. Now, a prescriptions officer can't actually write a prescription or alter a prescription, but her entire job involves stopping a doctor who can alter a prescription getting anywhere near it. It took me 6 weeks to discover I couldn't actually change a prescription in accordance with a letter from my consultant. But you know, it's wherever you go. So why is the NHS so monstrously inefficient? It's filled with these structures.
Rules. But
if you go into private medicine, I've just had my eye done. The thing that strikes you is how shallow the pyramid is.
Yes.
That you will see a doctor immediately. They work directly, usually with a single administrator. Tests are done on the spot. The results of the tests go directly back. And what we've done instead is to create, I suppose it's also a form of make work, but we've created these gigantic numbers of dreary
and that's why they're not worth paying a lot. I mean, when I moved to London, you got about 30 grand the bottom or 25, and the boss was 120. Now they're still on 30 grand the low workers, but the bosses are on 40 grand. So that's changed. And also, because of all these jobs now, no one ever takks responsibility. I mean, look at the BBC or the police or probation. No one, because you can't see who's responsible, or they can just get away with it. So all these layers.
The structures are designed, in fact, to evacuate the notion of private achievement, personal achievement, or personal responsibility. But until we bring that back, our entire politics is doing the same thing.
Can I give you another example? Because I think this is important, and I think this has been even more damaging than the NHS example. A friend of mine was telling me about setting up his printing business in the 70s. He went into Lloyds Bank, they told him he couldn't have a loan. He went into Barclays, they told him he could, because they had different parameters of how they loan. They had a different bank manager.
They also had a local bank manager.
A decision maker.
That changed in the 80s, didn't it?
A decision, I remember, you were revealing the fact that you're mentally sick. Let me reveal that I've been extravagant from the moment I was a sixth former. I remember the first time I bought a piece of antique furniture at auction and went £26 overdrawn. I was formally summoned by my bank manager to be reproved. But you know,
it was the Ark of the Covenant.
Who actually, indeed, sat me down and said, "Young man, You are embarking on a dangerous... It's wonderful. It's exactly... Didn't make any difference, of course. But I stored up this terrible warning and continued spending it extravagantly, which is why I constantly had to get better and better paid.
This is an awful story. I had a friend of mine, and he walked into the Barclays branch on Oxford Road in Manchester, and he said, "I'd like an extension of my overdraft." They went, "How much is your overdraft?" And he went, £4,000. I'd like it to be 6. And they went, "What are you studying?" And he went, "Law." "Which university?" University of Manchester." He went, "No problem." And then somebody else walked in, and we overheard this kid go, "Can I have an extension of my overdraft?" They went, "How much is it?" 800. "Can I have it to 900? And they went, "What are you studying?" "Performing arts." "Where are you studying it?" "Man Met." Declined.
Oh, how cool.
That's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah. From those who have nothing, even that which they have should be taken away.
But is it like, is the gap between the very wealthy and these sort of people that are just in these unworthy jobs, has it got to the stage of the Dickensian times? Are we getting to there? Because you've got now people, 5 people who are working, a family living in one room. I mean, that is actually happening now, a small 400 square foot room.
Again, I think that would be very definitely typical of many of these very large multi-generational, particularly immigrant families.
Well, mainly it's the working ones that have to 5 to a room, because if you're immigrant, you'll get the social housing with the multi-rooms, but if you're actually working, you don't get that. All you can afford is a
No, you're talking about people at the beginning of their careers.
Maybe 3 kids already.
In the East End, what a lot of the Bengalis would do is they would get 4 or 5 council houses, pile into one, and sublet the rest of them. Which is a good business.
That's going on a lot. In Edgware Road, that was going on.
But again, I really think what we've done, we've deliberately stripped people of identifiable functions and responsibility for themselves. This is where we go back to the whole business again of what's happened with welfare. And our whole politics, again, cultivates lies. So you live in this, in a sense, imaginary world. And what's happened in the last few months, particularly with the election of Donald Trump, is that imaginary world has begun to fall to pieces.
Yes.
So we're talking about the enormous strains on public finances, we're talking about the contradictions of policy, and there's a sudden sense, isn't there, of sort of everything
pivoting,
coming apart.
Yes.
And these are the moments when very good things could happen, or I tell you, talking of Donald Trump, and I think it's a reasonable thing to go on to, this whole thing with Elon Musk and whatever, when I discovered that Fauci was funding through a conduit the Wuhan virology lab, and you think, well, okay, do I believe that Fauci was involved in some sort of chemical or biological attack on the world? No, I don't. But, because of the way we've muddied the waters, there's no conflict of interest, is there? If he had directly given money from his institute to the Wuhan virology lab, then he would have had to admit it. But because it's been pushed through all these various mechanisms, and it ends up... Well, I remember seeing Lord Monckton speak, and he said, if something comes about, unexpectedly and out of the blue, it's probably a foreign intelligence service. The reality is, the whole move towards transsexualism, the whole move towards uncontrolled immigration has been publicly funded by the West, from what I can see, but the money has been given to dodgy organisations like Stonewall, who've done it on our behalf.
It's the victim sort of culture, isn't it?
I mean, just to fill that in, it's USAID. The funding for Stonewall and the whole push for transgenderism and transsexualism and whatever came directly from the United States government. To the extent that I gather Stonewall are half insolvent, having to cut back in a major way on the number of people they employ.
That is amazing. So just for those of you that didn't quite catch that, what David Starkey's saying, and you can check this out, is that Stonewall, the people that have pushed the whole transsexual agenda in Britain, now they've had their money from USAID cut, they're claiming that they're going to go insolvent. Now, that was the foreign aid budget to the United States of America. Nobody told us.
Indeed, nobody knew until Musk got to work. But again, you see, we will find exactly the same thing is true here. Did you see a little aside today on the subject of, we were talking about immigrants and whatever, on the whole business of Islamophobia and whatever. Do you know what's just been revealed? The Tell Mama organisation, the one that tries to register Islamophobia, is paid for directly by the government.
Wow.
Not surprised. Well, we pay UNRWA, don't we? We pay Hamas.
There's this extraordinary wheels.
But all of these wrong-uns are all funded by us.
Wheels within wheels.
Rory
within
Stewart's
worlds.
wife, David Miliband, you know, they're all on big telephone number wages because of that.
Right,
USA.
just to be clear, Rory Stewart's wife is not David Miliband. That was his wife.
Not that we know of. We can't confirm
We'll
that.
be back just in a mo.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Okay, we thought in the last bit of the David Starkey segment we would just put through callers 0344 499 1000. Philippa in Poole in Dorset, we're just going to put you through to David Starkey.
Philippa?
Come on, Philippa. Come on,
Hi,
Philippa.
David.
Hi,
Hi,
hello, how are
I'm
you?
I'm great, thank you. David, you actually know me. We've met on several occasions. I'm a historian studying disability history, so you probably remember me. We met in Wimborne some years ago.
I don't think he does.
Well, once met, never forgotten. But anyway, that's beside the point. Well, the point I want to make is, with this discussion about disabled people and being benefit scroungers, the general conversation is forgetting that there are genuinely disabled people who need...
Well, that's why we're talking about it. They should be getting a bigger piece of the pie.
Just let, please, yeah, please carry on.
And the problem is that we're all being lumped into one. All the eggs are into one basket, and there's a lot of conversation about people resenting people with disabilities. I have PIP. I had to fight to get PIP in 1979 as a little girl because I've got cerebral palsy, and I was born 2 pounds 2 ounces.
But no one's going to argue about someone with cerebral palsy getting it. That's exactly...
Hang on, I thought we were doing David Starkey.
Sorry, Professor.
But I mean, I think you made a very, very important point, which is the fact that, as you said, people like you who are genuine and seriously disabled are tarred with the brush of the benefit scrounger, and this is a dreadful thing. But can I put something else to you, which I hope you won't be offended by, or you may be, but what we're doing is we are deliberately encouraging more people who are seriously disabled to live. We are, remember, the risk of disablement from first cousin marriage, which has suddenly become extremely frequent within immigrant communities. The risks are multiplied. And again, the fact that we can now keep children, I mean, you were describing yourself, extremely premature children alive, in of course, and you yourself illustrated, increases hugely the risk of very serious disability. Now, we've done this. We've done it very much, I think, as a reaction to the horrors of Nazism, the slaughter of the disabled, minorities and whatever. But can we just continue doing it? Suddenly, the apparently limitless sums of money that we thought we had have dried up, and they've dried up dramatically. But we haven't thought. We haven't had public discussion. Public discussion has been deliberately suppressed. Now, I feel, let me explain my own position. I was born with minor disability, which could have become very severe. I was born with club feet, and I got polio. By a miracle, and it was very unusual in those days, it stopped, and it was limited simply to the lower leg. So on one side, relatively trivial. So I have some sense of what I might have been if there hadn't been surgery, if there hadn't been, this is well ahead of the Salk vaccine, if there hadn't been that margin of luck. So I'm not heartless, but we've got to start asking serious questions. We've again got to start asking serious questions about how we handle the whole of the NHS. Do you know that the end-of-life care, the last 18 months of a person's life, the NHS normally spends more on them than in all the rest of their life put together. So we're just not asking sensible questions. We are simply assuming that there's no limit on money.
Is that why they froze the pension? They were hoping 4,500, probably a lot more, would freeze to, well, it's 40 or 50,000 in the winter period, will die and won't be a burden.
There are all sorts of things. But what we're doing is we're simply now doing things as an emergency, unthinkingly, not rationally.
It's widening.
We've deliberately avoided these discussions. We've got to have
Is it because of
them.
cowardice?
OK, Philippa, I'm going to
nice.
leave it there simply because we've not got massive amounts of time with David Starkey. No. Carol, you're through to... before we do this, actually, we're putting the calls directly to David. Come on, right.
I was just interpreting them for
OK, so, Carol, you're through to David Starkey.
Hiya, David. I've really listened to you, and you're a very interesting man, and really educational and that, you know, like I've really learned a lot of things. There's a lot of things that I do agree with you, and there's certain things that I don't agree with.
Well, I'm really pleased about that. It'd be a very dull world if we all agreed with each other, wouldn't it?
When you just said end of care, that, you know, like our NHS have been paying for the end of care. I had to pay over £4,500 for my mother who died end of care, you know, like in a home for... had great end of care and whatever.
Sorry.
Right, we're all tied with the same brush.
Yeah.
So it doesn't go that way. Our country.
Can I just quickly?
If you don't mind,
Carol, give us a second. He just wants to clarify.
I just want to clarify one thing. I wasn't talking about what we normally call end-of-life care. I was talking about the fact that you will very often get very radical medical interventions in the last stage of life. I remember, let me tell you, anecdote is always a good way we understand this. My poor aunt, who was in her 90s, who'd been a very active woman, after 90 she sort of stopped. So of course you begin to get, your legs begin to go. She could only get to the garden gate, and she had this hideous, humiliating final thing. She fell off her commode and broke her hip. Do you know what the NHS did? It replaced it.
Ridiculous.
And she effectively died of bed sores.
Yes.
But at immense medical cost. Intervention which was wholly destructive, wholly damaging, and hugely costly. And this happens time after time after time.
But I mean, I think what we have to do is be much more willing to say, well, it's over now. you know, you are, I'm not going to say 80 because you are 80, you're 105.
I think that is the honest approach. The radical medical interventions in those over 80 are simply silly. Can we go back to COVID? The figures, they vary, but essentially the average age of death, I thought, was 82 from COVID. The average age of death is 81. So I had the slogan, get COVID, live longer. And yet we destroyed our economy.
Yeah, we did.
With this vast intervention.
Remember,
so what I'm trying to say is there's a fundamental unreason. We've stopped thinking. If we go back to the great Victorians thought and researched before they did. No, it's not simply practical. The way Parliament worked in the Victorian period is radically different. You have a parliamentary commission, not a royal commission that's just a vast laundry basket in which you stuff things that you don't want to deal with, which took
Mm.
evidence from witnesses, handled it quickly, with astonishing speed, produces a report, and you get legislation. And it is a completely different way.
But what people do in Parliament now is they just stick in the bits that they want in their own hobby horse. But I thought Lord Sumption, the former, I think he's, the chief of the Supreme Court, which I know
he wasn't. He was a justice of the Supreme Court.
Justice of the Supreme Court. Or I prefer
He's
to call
also
it,
a historian, by the
I
way.
also prefer to call it Law Lord, but okay, fair enough. But he made the point about, I think, his mother-in-law who had dementia. He said she was killed by the lockdown, but she will not be included in any of this. They'll say, well, we managed to stop all those people dying because of the lockdown. Well, don't worry about children being unable to speak. Don't worry about kids being confined to the home because they're frightened to go out. Don't worry about the fact we have destroyed the proposition of ever having a successful vaccine rollout again. Forget all that, it doesn't matter, because we can point to one or two grannies.
That's right, but can we do something else? It shows that our entire model of government doesn't work.
Yes.
Because what we have, COVID was just an extreme form of government by quango.
Yes.
We were ruled effectively by a single issue committee, a group of scientists led by people like Paul Nurse, who had a single goal, which was to stop anybody dying of COVID. It didn't matter, as you said, if you bankrupted the country. It didn't matter if children ceased to be educated.
At one point, it was £1 billion per victim at one point.
It's completely lunatic. And again, we assumed that there was a wrong method of treatment. Putting people in ICUs actually killed them. Yes. We now know. And at the same time, we had all these empty Nightingale hospitals. Complete malfunction of government. But do you know, the whole of our structure of government is like this. We are run not by the government, not by the government, not by the cabinet. We're run by a series of single issue committees. And a single issue committee, climate change, English nature, whatever, is the worst way of running anything.
I just want to do one thing, because I'm really sorry, Carol. David Starkey's car is 30 seconds away, and we did interrupt you. So, Carol, I'll let you make your point, and David can quickly respond.
Can I just say, like for our young people, please give them a bit of leeway, right?
We've done that.
Very, very rough for them. It's been very rough for them. And I'm very strict, believe me.
But you're making them the victim. This is what they thrive on, Carol.
But no, I'm not. Believe me, I'm out here with them all, right? And believe me, I'm very, very strict. They pay their own way. You've got to work. I'm having no rubbish. If you're ill, go to work. It's got nothing to do with
Most
that.
aren't like
it's
that,
what we've had. What has been left, there's so much going on. It's not just one thing, so much going on. Our kids cannot afford rent. Never mind, they can't even get a rented accommodation. Never mind anything. They're living at home and whatever. They haven't got the kind of thing that we wake up in the morning when I did at that age, right?
Why can't they rent in Manchester's $500-600 a month? Why can't they earn that?
Pardon?
Why can't they earn the rent for Manchester? £700 a month. You can get a place in London for that.
I'd like
a room.
Because 1,200 is round there where I live.
You'll get a great place in Manchester for
however, it was a call to David, so come on, David, do you wish to respond?
Yes, I do. I think that we have, in fact, indulged the idea of mental illness.
Yes.
I think, and again, I'm afraid the royal family Prince William has played a major part in this. And mental illness is something let's be quite blunt, it is very easy to fake.
Yes.
Again, it has been insufficiently challenged. It's the whole Dianification that we're supposed, as it were, to examine our feelings. When certainly I'm very ancient. I was brought up on the whole that you keep your feelings to yourself, and that airing your feelings in public is, rather like a dirty handkerchief waved around, and you don't do it. Now, of course, this business of turning yourself out in public, and I think it leads to emotional incontinence.
It's a virtue to be able to not cope. OK, but David, your car is downstairs. Carol, thanks so much. We're going to go to a break because David's in a rush. Thank you. Be back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
OK, let's get straight to your calls. Georgina is in London. Georgina, you're on Talk.
Hello. I just wanted to say, I know you're going to probably tell me off, but the people who are severely disabled, I do agree with what you said, and they should get benefits, especially if they've been born with a disability. I myself have osteomyelitis, so I can't use my left arm. I have never accepted any form of payment from the government.
Georgina, can I say this to you? When we have these debates, the number one thing that happens is a group of very lovely and obviously tax-paying and hard-working people phone up to tell us that disabled people exist and they need to be supported. And in a sense...
Well, I am one.
No, I understand that. But what will happen now is the phones will light up with like a Christmas tree by people saying, don't personally have a go at me. Whereas actually what we're talking about is, if you've lost a leg in a road traffic accident, fairly obviously that's very different to pretending you have PTSD.
Yeah, but there's still plenty of jobs out there, especially in a world where you can sit in an office.
And that was my point. What you're saying is absolutely right. People are jumping on this bandwagon and say, oh, well, it's not us. But there are a lot of people taking advantage of the system, and this is what the problem is, because they are draining the system.
It's a victim culture, though, isn't it? No one wants to be seen as not being nice. This is why we're lumbered with the NHS,
Forget not being nice. The time for that has passed.
Exactly. We haven't got the luxury to be nice anymore.
Exactly. We have got people who need serious help, and they can't get it because the system has been drained.
Being milked.
And not just... Exactly. That's a fabulous way of putting it. I mean, I've had 5 children. I have never accepted any family allowance benefits because I'm an old girl.
What about Georgina? What about this? the examples that David Starkey gave, there are two things which are massively increasing the amount of welfare that we have to pay out for disabled children, disabled people. One of them is our improved care for premature children. Now, I know, look, it's a minefield to discuss this, but the other thing is that we allow people to marry their first cousin and then in the next generation marry their first cousin. And it's something like, if you are a Muslim in this country, and I'll just come straight out with this, you are 16 times more likely to have a birth defect as a result of cousin marriage. Now, if we were to criminalise cousin marriage and lock people up, the number of people that have severe learning and physical disabilities would fall through the floor. The other thing that we could do is we could say, if a baby's born so prematurely, that is Mother Nature's way of saying that it's not viable, put it in an incubator, see what happens, but if it doesn't survive, don't make any special intervention. Now, both of those are controversial things, but you know, what you are talking about then, I mean, I had an example when I worked at Windsor and Maidenhead Council where we had a child who was going to going to a boarding school where the school fees were £250,000 a year. And that child, by the time it graduated age 12, couldn't wipe its bum. Now, you're talking about £250,000 a year for, what, 15 years? And you think, where is the morality in that when kids 5 minutes down the road are paying tuition fees? No problem hiring a nurse. But, you know, and what used to happen was we constantly used to get taken to court and these social workers would turn up and go, it might not be the cheapest, but the law doesn't say the cheapest, the law says the best. And these owners of companies would come up with this crazy, let's have 15 people all bathing them and all this sort of thing. And you think...
It's a big money spinner. That's where it ultimately comes from.
Well, that, you know, people like, I mean, you basically have just said there what I was going to say.
Right.
So you have now been my voice, and I don't have to say anything.
Stolen Georgina's thunder.
He's stolen my voice. You've stolen my
sorry,
voice.
Georgina.
No,
Can I ask you though about your 5 kids? Do you not worry that they're being heavily discriminated against because they're not disabled, they're not penniless, they do want to get a job?
Well, my children are all, well, apart from the youngest who's only 16, my children are all working. And I was going to say to you, I mean, I was brought up in a very, very old-fashioned family, stiff upper lip and all that. And they said to me, if people cannot afford to have children, then they should not have children. That's what they said. And they said to me also, you know, don't accept benefits from the government. Leave the benefits for people who need it.
Well, I have to say to you, I mean, the big problem you've got now is I opposed having social housing in Windsor because it wasn't given to the Coldstream Guards. It was instead given to people who'd recently come to the country because they were the ones that were destitute. And my own view is, don't push up the price of housing by creating social housing only to use it as a huge draw factor for people to come to the country illegally. I don't think it makes any sense at all. Anyway, thank you so much, Georgina. The number to call is 03444991000. Really sorry to Tony, who we will get to in the next hour. Stay on the line, Tony. We're going to be talking to you at Virtual Ash.
At Andre JP Walker.
You can also follow my YouTube, which is where the really fruity stuff is, and that's just Andre Walker, ANDRE. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember the big social house, Windsor Castle, and the Queen tried to claim all that damage when she had the horriblest anus, but she in the end paid for it herself. But even the Queen was up for a bit of benefit.
Indeed. Back in a mo.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk. This is a press preview with Andre Walker, Asher Gould, Matt Stevens and Anna McGovern. I just want to say before we do anything at all that we've had a message in from Greg on WhatsApp. I promise you, Greg, I agree with you 100%, but I'm not reading that out on it's just not happening. He had a unique method of no, let's not, actually. It's a really bad idea. Okay, Tony, just look at that. What asylum seekers. Tony is in Lancashire.
No, you can't do that. Not yet, anyway.
Tony is in Lancashire. Tony, you're on Talk.
Good evening, Andre and Ash.
Hello.
All right,
How are you?
we're all right, man. What do you want to say, Tony?
I just want to ask Dr. David.
He's gone, but we'll do an impression. Yes, what is it, Tony?
All right, then. He was going on about Steve's questions earlier on then, right?
Yes.
We can all agree that these illegals jump in the queue, they're broken, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Why are they not being upended, arrested and fingerprints taken?
Yeah, you're right.
Thirdly, I'd do a Trump. I'll say to France, if you don't take these illegals back, then I'm going to start revoke your fishing licence and bring it back to England. And not only that, they shouldn't be going on to universal credit. They shouldn't be allowed to get it. Universal credit or benefits.
I'll tell you what I'd do, Tony. Very, very simple. There are loads of uninhabited islands. Everybody who wants to come to the UK escaping danger elsewhere can go and live on that uninhabited island. They're not allowed to move from it. We'll just airdrop in the food and clothing that they need.
The Australian system works.
Yeah.
Proven to work. Why haven't we done that?
And we'll make Shamima Begum the Governor-General. Right, that's
Fantastic.
what we'll do. There we go. And you can all... Now, if you are genuinely in fear of your life, that will be a good offer. But I suspect you're not, though, are you?
Oh, I could save 10 billion, right? We give 3.5 billion on transport for immigrants, for these illegals, I believe. 6.6 billion for them to integrate, like what, zoo trips and all that lot. And yet we give so much to France, Rwanda, China, India. And yet they're using the NHS, you haven't paid any national insurance. And yet if I were to go abroad, I've got to pay travel insurance, so...
They get in-house dentists, in-house doctors. We can't get even appointments for stuff.
My favourite one of them all was the video of Sadiq Khan telling people about how he was giving bikes to migrants, and it was cut in with what the migrants were doing with the bikes, which was interesting. Tony, thank you so much. This is the press preview.
Don't forget Mike Graham coming up if you're listening in the morning. And start with the Daily Mail. Council tax soars to a record high, and there you can see the bins. The bin men are on strike in Birmingham. This is the press preview panel. We've got Matt Stevens, who was a former social media manager at Reform, and Anna McGovern, you all know her, political commentator. Council tax soars to record high, and look at the state of the bins. There's rats everywhere. It's looking like it could be a public health
I've got to tell you what I've done about rats in my house. Right, so can I tell you something?
Make them welcome.
Every single place in the country now, because these fortnightly bin collections, has rats. Now, I'm not going to tell you to commit a crime, but there's something that is, to use a phrase from the internet, barely legal, right? Which is this.
It's a magazine, I think.
You can get this really, really good rat poison that's been banned in the United Kingdom. And what I do is I deploy it in various places around my building. And you know, the ground floor of my block of flats absolutely stinks of death. Because every time these rats try and get up, they are met by these, they're called blue pearls or something. They're absolute dirt.
Blue pearls, I know those ones, but I mean, you've got to be careful with dogs and so on. It's got to be obviously legal. Don't put illegal stuff down in your passages. But yeah, in Birmingham, there's a massive strike. There's rats everywhere. There was almost like there was 3 arrests the other day, and it's literally it's just rubbish everywhere, and that's just the face of things to come. Because although that's a strike, in the end, like Andre says, it's going to fortnightly. In some places, it's now every 4 weeks, which is untenable, especially in the summer.
I think, and the fact, Anna, that they banned lots of rat poison as well is ludicrous. It's not good.
And mothballs.
Are mothballs illegal?
Yeah, apparently, yeah. You get holes in you.
I've got to be honest with you, and I'm very sorry to say this. They've said you can't deploy rat poison. You've just got to let the rats take over. I'm afraid I've broken that rule. In fact, I've never observed that rule in my life, and I never will, Matt.
I'm not sure anybody has, but look, we're all joking about this, but this is a serious story. You know, council tax for people in Birmingham has gone up by 20%, and we've got rats roaming around the streets. We've got litter everywhere. I mean, this just sums up the state of the UK at the moment. It's an absolute joke, isn't it?
We're seeing this so much more, especially even the high streets as well. Some of our high streets, this is not uncommon to see. You just see rubbish everywhere. People don't care about their communities
But there's a lot of
anymore.
corruption in the councils. I'm not saying Birmingham specifically, we don't know, but all over the country there's a lot of people making a lot of money and it's not getting paid on the services. That's what's going on.
I have to say, I mean, I when you take the train from Windsor to Slough and you look at some of the planning permission that's been granted, you know that Slough councillors are on the take. There's this current investigation as to whether one of them asked for £500,000 in a bag. You know, if they were actually going to be serious, they'd prosecute these lot. I guarantee you that the vast majority of councils in this country, particularly in the city, you can bribe them for planning permission.
And there was a guy, I think this was in Birmingham, there was a kid getting a taxi to school and the bills were like hundreds of thousands of pounds, and it was obviously, you know, people are in the council who've got family here and they're giving them the contracts and they're unbelievably paid well contracts. I know the problem originally in Birmingham was because dinner ladies won a case where they won that they should be paid the same as bin men, and they had to go back years and pay all these dinner ladies, which I suppose is right. But eventually, as Professor David Starkey was on earlier, the straw's going to break the camel's back. That's the way it's going to be killed, because they're cowardly, spineless people.
First of all do, I mean, it becomes worse and worse and worse, Matt, because the first thing they do is the commissioners come in if you run out of money as a local council, and they will sell all your parks for housing development and then include 40% social housing. So it'll be all pretty bad, and it'll just get worse and worse and worse.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm reading here in Birmingham particularly, council tax has risen by £2,000, and people will be asking themselves, for what? You know, you can't get your bins collected on time. You can't go to your park because they've all been closed down. You can't go to your local gym because it's been closed down. You can't go and take your kids for a swim at a leisure centre because it's been closed down. It's an absolute joke. And
people who live here aren't living like we would live. You know, some people will put rubbish in. You know, it's becoming the third world in these cities.
You'd be better actually with these local councils saying, right, what is the total cost of the underfunded pensions in your local council, and just tell people what they owe in advance. Just say so as an example, maybe in Birmingham it may well be that each household owes £15,000 for all of these fatties to retire age 55.
Well, a massive percentage is on pensions in councils.
We had somebody at Windsor Maidenhead Council once again, and he received a £20,000 pay rise the month before he retired. No, it was 10,000 actually, but that meant because of the pension rules, he could retire on 2/3 of that. So he received age 55, £6,666 a year for life because he worked for 1 month on that 10 grand.
And in the NHS, they do a similar thing where they'll get another job the next day, but they still get that pension.
I mean, it's just the political class looking after themselves, and that's what happens too often in this country. It's a disgrace.
You must have met a supply teacher. I mean, that's what supply teachers are.
I just think this is getting so horrific, and they're targeting especially the families as well. Bills are getting so much higher. How can you afford to live when you're seeing this just rise so exponentially high?
Well, I mean, actually, the reality is, on the Eurostar, an 80 quid return from Paris, actually living in the UK might be not a particularly great idea.
No.
Because, all right, it's £400 a week in transport, but by the time you're paying an extra £2 grand a year, well, I mean, it's unbelievable.
I mean, you joke, but I bet there are people doing that.
Oh, there's loads of them.
I bet there are people doing
loads
that.
Of them.
It's just a disgrace. It speaks for how bad our country's being run, doesn't it?
I was just going to say, I believe it's in Hungary where they've just cut income tax for mothers who have two or more children. So they seem to be going in the right direction. They're actually helping families.
No income tax.
Yeah,
if you have 2 children, women pay no income tax. Which
It's
really
amazing. It's amazing that we were talking about social housing, weren't we, before you guys arrived. I mean, this idea, well, what you will do with social housing, very simply, is that you will charge young people with their starter homes extra. So let's call it 50-50. If you want a house, you've got to buy a house next door for somebody to move in, and that person will almost certainly be a recent migrant to the UK. And so effectively, young people will turn around and go, oh, I can't afford 2 kids because I've got to buy 2 houses, right? And so if I buy a house big enough for a family of 4, I've got to buy 2 houses big enough for a family of 4. Family of 5, 2 houses. So they go, I'll just buy a small, modest house for myself so Mr. Iqbal can come over and live in the other one.
They can't even afford that.
Or I'll just move out the country and go and live somewhere else.
That is what I mean. What's happening with your age group? There are a lot of people you've got to move out.
Increasingly, a lot of people are moving to Dubai. I've seen a lot of it on social media recently because you pay no income tax. The country's much safer. There's no crime at all. You can leave your phone on a park bench overnight.
Isn't it expensive though?
No.
I think the prices are actually quite comparable, especially with London, where it's £15 to get a bottle of water at a Sainsbury's or a Tesco's or anywhere.
Well, that's the other thing. Kids buy bottles of water and sandwiches. They don't connect that. That adds up to 10% of your wages for a latte.
Absolutely, people don't look after money.
No, I was going to say, I think there's a trend of a lot of more young adults going to Australia in their early 20s because you've got the working holidays visa, and then they go
so
out.
You're just talking about yourself.
Yeah, that's it. I did that. That's what I did for a year.
But is it much nicer life? Are you thinking of leaving the UK?
You know, at some point I have considered it because bills are rising so high, it's becoming almost impossible to live in this country, especially as a young adult. You're starting out.
My view is so my departure from the United Kingdom, I think, will be for multiple reasons. I mean, partly for tax, but actually principally, I don't think you can be credible in this seat and live in the United Kingdom. But the reality is, the regulators are going to make this industry illegal, right? They're going to make it illegal to broadcast genuine truth about what's going on with the nation. Keir Starmer's already lined that up. My YouTube channel, that'll become illegal.
The online safety bill,
So what I'll do is I'll just go out of jurisdiction, and since I'm a citizen of the Irish Republic, and there's nothing the Irish Republic like more than to broadcast stuff into the United Kingdom.
But the EU will also do that as well.
That's probably right, actually. Yeah, it's probably right. So welcome Isle of Man. Tynwald.
Sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan.
Get to Tynwald.
Right, let's do another paper. The Times. UK sends message to Putin about deterrent. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. I heard we're going to maybe send jets over to protect the troops. We have the nuclear weapons to cause untold damage if attacked, warns Defence Secretary. I mean, we need to dial it down a bit, don't we? I mean, why are we going into...
Putin, I've said this before, Putin will not nuke the United Kingdom. His daughter and grandson live in Weybridge, in St George's Hill.
Moscow would get obliterated.
Look, the reality is, he's just a thief and a hypocrite. That's the reality. He's not going to nuke his grandson. I mean, where's his other grandchild?
Who knows?
The Netherlands.
How many has he got?
Yeah. I didn't even know that.
No, he's got 2 daughters. One lives in Weybridge and the other, I think, lives in Amsterdam.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah, well, this is really important. You know, people have been hesitant to put troops on the ground, and I think rightly so, because our armed force has been hollowed out so much. But there has to be a genuine deterrent, whether that's jets in the sky or whatever, because we've seen Putin is a vile dictator. We've seen him breach the Minsk agreement in 2014. So, look, whatever the security agreement is, whatever happens, it's got to be a lasting peace with proper guarantees in place. So, you know, people will look at it with worry, but we've got to send a message to Putin that enough is enough.
He doesn't care. Look, after that call with Trump, he promised not to bomb, the electricity and nuclear stations, and then that's what he did. He bombed them. So now they're saying, well, America should take over the power system in Ukraine. Don't you think that's the way forward, possibly?
It's potentially it's the way forward, but whatever happens, as you've said, he doesn't listen to people. He doesn't listen to Trump. He doesn't listen to Starmer. He listens to no one, Putin.
It's quite interesting, though, Matt, that the stupidity of that when he made promises to Trump and then just openly broke them.
It's astonishing. And Donald Trump came in and said, look, Putin will respect me and Putin will listen to me. And people thought, yeah, maybe he will. But he hasn't.
But isn't that just a negotiation? Isn't he just being sort of out-trumping Trump? It's the art of Putin's
Well, that won't work, will it? That won't work. And I'm sure this will end very badly for Russia if they continue with this crazy behaviour, ignoring Trump, ignoring...
Or will it end badly for us?
I think not.
I mean, he doesn't care, does he?
I think not. The world community, apart from perhaps China and maybe Hungary, are actually united against Russia. So let's hope we can come out of this with a lasting peace.
Luxury brands voice alarm over Labour's copyright plans. Britain's biggest brands have said that Labour's plans to overhaul copyright law to benefit AI companies, because we're pushing ahead with that, is the wrong approach. This is a very dangerous situation. Helen Bucklebank, Chief Executive of Walpole, an industry group, said that she represents 250 of the top luxury companies in fashion. Basically, they're dumbing down the copyright laws because of all this AI. I mean, a lot of actors and musicians, I know Paul McCartney was signed up to the 500 musicians. They're basically, are they going too much with this AI at the expense of our own industries?
What I've noticed as well, the Labour Party in their own social media is they're increasingly using AI to promote their policy manifestos. I remember a video video that went viral, like must have been a couple of months back, where they used animals to promote key workers, and it was so badly received.
What was the normal key worker in the council? A flea-ridden dog.
Maybe a rat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
exactly.
Ratatouille from Birmingham.
In a way, I think that this is something to be, cause for concern, especially with Labour, the way that they're pushing through with this, and like the increasing of AI replacing industries, literally within our government as well.
I'll tell you what I want to abolish. I want to abolish the Defamation Act, right? Because I guarantee you, I can say anything about you whatsoever and you can do nothing about it. The reason is the day one High Court fees to sue me is 10 grand. Then it's going to cost you, with a barrister, probably 50 or 60,000 pounds a day for a 2-week trial. As long as the Defamation Act stays on the books, people get the... So I've been defamed by the Mail on Sunday. I've mentioned this before. In fact, I think about 14 times. But then people say, well, if it's not true, why didn't you sue? And the answer is it would have cost me £1 million. I don't have it. So we need rid of the Defamation Act, because then you go, I can't sue because it's not possible.
So I put it in a magistrate's court, I suppose.
No, you put it in the small claims court.
The Daily Telegraph, Bridget and the crazy conspiracies, or is it? It's going around that she is a man, and some even say it's Macron's father. But anyway, we had Elon Musk, though, he said that, but that's what's going around at the moment. Growth forecast halve in blow to PM. Reeves to blame downgrade on Trump, but critics point finger at her tax-raising budget. So, I mean, this is Rachel Thief saying, we want growth. They're just wishing growth, yet they're taxing companies to the hilt. They're bringing in all the net zero stuff. They're just making everything more difficult. How can they expect growth? They're not even investing, and public spending's going to go down. They're
just putting it into more pay
pocket.
rises for their people. It's the UK is like the Soviet Union now in the following respect, that the governing party is the public sector party, and therefore they're not acting for you, they're acting for the public sector. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a surprise. When you raise taxes on business by £40 billion, you can't expect growth. If you want growth, you've got to cut taxes, raise the income tax threshold to £20,000, make it easier for people to get to work. They've done the opposite. So
they believe there will be. They're sort of in that mindset, aren't they? They've got this sort of that woke mind virus. They're like wishing growth.
And what we saw yesterday as well, I don't know if you saw in the Sun, net zero is going to hit GDP by 10%. So all of this stuff the Labour Party and the Conservatives did, it is damaging our economy and damaging young people's prospects for the future. It's a disgrace.
And Kemi Badenoch saying, she didn't really say much.
She didn't say anything.
She said net zero, this isn't viable, but it sort of seemed like she was going to say 2030 is not viable, it's going to be 2035. She's totally lost the plot.
Well, she said it's a fantasy, net zero, but net zero is her fantasy. She's the one who's
voted for it all along.
She voted for EV mandates, for people. She voted for people to change their boilers, gas boilers.
She goes with the wind, whichever way the wind's blowing, and people have seen through it.
This is her fantasy. This is her fantasy.
Damage. So what do you think with Reform and the Tories, because you used to work there, is Nigel Farage's aim to get into the Tories, and what is the aim?
It would sort of be like Netflix saying, let's get into bed with Blockbuster as they started to imagine.
No, but Netflix is the biggest company, whereas Reform isn't. But if they could get into...
But Reform will be, I think. Looking at the polls, there's a clear trend. The Tories are sat still, absolutely sat still on 20.
What's your inside knowledge on it?
My inside knowledge is there will be no pact, because the Tories broke Britain. Why would we want to limit our... the Tories are probably limited at 30% for the next few years. Why would we want to limit ourselves? The sky is the aim for Reform, not the...
And what did you see when you were there, and whose side you on, Rupert or Nigel? So what did you see when you were within...
I think this is a really interesting situation, but Reform is bigger than two men. Reform has the hopes of...
Well, it's not really, is it?
Well, it is, because...
Is it, though?
Well, if you look...
But maybe that's the right way. Trump is one man, and it was all about him.
Well, Trump has good men around him, and he's doing a good job. But we've got to remember in this, Nigel has won 2 national elections with 2 separate parties. He's the only politician in this country ever to have done that. So people thinking, they know best than him, and maybe should think again. He's got a clear track record of success. Polling hasn't changed since his Rupert situation, so maybe people should stop tweeting about it.
Should he make up with Rupert then, or is Rupert out?
I think Rupert has continued to behave in an appalling way since this has happened, spouting nonsense on social media.
So should he stop? And what about your chairman as well? But should Rupert stop and just...
I think Rupert should stop, absolutely.
And what about your chairman? Is he doing a good job?
Well, look, last year we stood in 12% of local elections seats. This year we're looking to stand in 100%.
I'm sorry, this just sounds like reform propaganda we're hearing here. OK, first up, I think with Rupert Lowe, I actually joined Reform in January because of Rupert Lowe. I did not vote Reform in the last general election because I wasn't fully convinced. But I think the way that he just spoke to people and truly understood what their concerns were, he poured so much time into his research, him and his team. I've actually spoken to him at length as well.
And his own money as well.
Yeah, exactly. So he donates his MP salary to charity and to his constituency, which can't really be said, I think, to many other people. So I think he's probably one of the best politicians we have in Parliament. And I think it's safe to say when I think the actions that were taken by Reform for a start, he does an interview and he raises valid concerns about Reform. And I think he spoke to, many of the members who shared those same concerns, and I think when he did that, it wasn't to get at the party. Well, when I watched it, it didn't seem it was a way to tear the party down. It was genuinely trying to raise valid concerns
that he couldn't do behind closed doors.
Exactly, and he also said that he'd been trying to speak to them for months, and either it was being refused or completely ignored.
So who's the problem? Is it Nigel? Is it Rupert? Or is it the chairman? Maybe it's Nigel with the chairman sort of egging each other on. Is that where it's coming from?
Well, I had a call I'm not going to say names or anything, but I got a call from someone in my constituency who is working within Reform, and he said to me that he'd been speaking to some of the officials and he was massively concerned, especially about Zia Youssef, and he said to me that Zia Youssef and Nigel Farage are the exact same level within Reform. That's his words. Don't know whether that's true or not, can't verify that. That's what he said. And I think for many people as well, Zia Youssef seemed to have come from nowhere. Also the fact, interestingly, the day, I believe, after Rupert Lowe gave that interview where he raised his concerns about the future of Reform, Zia Youssef waits almost 3 months to report Rupert Lowe to the police.
Yeah.
Just there was an incident the week before he was reported to the police as well, so there wasn't just one incident in December.
For something in his office, though, it wasn't even him.
It was about 2 of his staffers who were under investigation for other allegations entirely unrelated, and they only raised that after that started.
Look, this is not Plan A, but people have to look. Who is the best party placed to save Britain? Now, Reform were the only party with a hope on the right of politics to save Britain, so people have to look at this, put it behind them. You don't agree with every party 100%, and look, people have got to get behind Reform.
But is Nigel's aim to be more mainstream, link up with the Tories and bring them into reality?
So it's certainly not to link up with the Tories, but to win an election, you cannot just rely on the votes of the right. You have to get some votes from the centre ground. It's absolutely non-tenable to just pretend you can win from the right, because you can't. No one's ever done that in this country.
I think what we're seeing as well is, especially with the fallout of Rupert Lowe, him being suspended from the party, from my opinion and from other Reform members who are not happy about this, it seems that too many egos got bruised, and it seems that certain decisions were taken that were very conveniently timed just because he stuck his neck out and raised valid concerns. And I think what I have respect for is what we see with many of our politicians is they'll just toe to the party line, and even if they personally don't agree with what the party is doing, they'll just follow along with it. They'll vote in favour because they want to keep their jobs, they want to keep good favour. Whereas he is not afraid to speak his mind, and I think I have a lot of respect for that.
But Nigel should have realised that. I mean, he's had problems in the past with people like that, and he should have thought, well, he was almost like carrying the vase, wasn't he, the Ming vase, because he was doing so well. So he should have worked out a way to speak to Rupert and keep this behind closed doors and sort things out.
From my opinion, I think he might have been concerned. Now, I can't speak again on Nigel's behalf, but from what it seems like is that Rupert was raising very quickly in popularity. Even Elon Musk himself was doubting Nigel Farage's suitability to lead the Reform Party.
And supporting Rupert Lowe.
Exactly. So I think from then on, he sort of set a mark on himself, Rupert, and I think Nigel might have seen that as a threat.
Matt's got our message.
OK, Matt Stevens is talking rot. Nigel Farage and MZY, who's that, Youssef, have ruined Reform. I will never vote for them again. They are the Confirm Party.
But they're
Conform Party.
But they're the only party in town, like you said.
Only party in town, and look, there is frustration about this, but I will look in a few years, and I guarantee that person who's messaged in will vote for Reform, because we're the only party in town. This will be completely forgotten about in a few years' time.
I don't think so.
Look, the poll ratings are clear. Since this instant, Reform have maintained the lead in the polls, in most polls, and certainly haven't fallen in any. So, Look, it's
But
it's
could
not
it have
plan
been
A.
handled better?
As I said, it's not plan A. Of course it could have been handled better.
I'm sure that when Rupert Lowe was suspended, I read that apparently 7,000 members actually had resigned from the party.
Although it
over
was
a
70.
Weekend. Huh?
It was 70.
I thought it said 7,000. Okay.
Somebody said 7,000, it wasn't.
Okay, then that is incorrect.
I would have
read
thought it's
that,
more
then,
than
to be fair.
70 have quit after this.
It was,
I
I
mean,
think
that's still
1,000 left, 1,000 joined there or thereabout. I think
Oh, it was
seven-
net 70.
I think net 70 is about the right mark.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So actually, it could have been 1,000 people left.
But then 1,000
But you've got that
yeah,
trajectory
of course.
anyway. That probably makes
Yeah.
sense.
Another in the Daily Terror, expats to be cut off from BBC radio and podcasts within weeks. Quite right, they don't pay for it. It's not for you. And we don't really have that soft power anymore. And the BBC are pretty useless. You know, they're giving us a bad name abroad. Let's have a look. Coe rejected in bid to be Olympic president. That's right, he was going to be Olympic president, but that's
Probably
not
didn't
happening.
bribe them enough.
He got 5 votes, I think. He did appallingly.
No,
Net zero.
the problem is the IOC is a den of sin. They're all as dodgy as
They
hell.
make the, I remember when they were here, they made the roads the wrong way around.
The way they like to pretend, the IOC, they like to pretend there are delegates from each country.
Yeah.
There's not. What they do is they'll go right. Well, there's all these crown princes from dodgy dictatorships and all this, and sort of Colonel Gaddafi's son and all this sort of thing. And Sepp Blatter's son was on there, and Sepp Blatter's son was his only qualification was that he'd received the Red Star of Yugoslavia or something, right? But basically, they then say this delegate is the Israeli delegate, but it's not. It's just one of their mates who happens to have an Israeli passport.
It's like FIFA and the World Cup in Qatar. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? In the middle of the summer. They were talking about this earlier. Net zero push risks 70s style energy shock. And you know, like we had the 3-day week in the 70s, it's eventually going to break, isn't it? This net zero, it's going to break the system.
Yeah, it's going to destroy the
It's
country.
broken our industry. I mean, how can you set up any factory now with costs as they are?
Yeah, I think Ed Miliband is on a one-man mission to destroy Britain's economy. You know, we saw
It's not just him, though. I mean, he's the most deranged.
I mean, the Tories started all this. We mustn't forget the Tories
Boris
started
Johnson,
all this.
wasn't it?
Boris
I
Johnson
agree
is
with that.
obsessed. Boris Johnson is obsessed with net zero.
I think he was under the thumb. He was told by his wife.
And his
She
dad as
smashed
well,
another
yeah.
wine bottle across the wall.
Perhaps.
And he doesn't like confrontation. Boris.
Right, I think we need to go to a break, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, OK, we will be back just a couple of moments with the press preview.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is the press preview with Andre Walker, Asher Gould, and our guest co-hosts are Matt Stevens and Anna McGovern. Welcome to both of you. Welcome particularly to Matt. This is your first press preview, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here. Really enjoying it.
Are you?
Yeah, I am. I love
Yeah,
it.
a bit of a go at you about reform.
Yeah, well, that's the fun of it, isn't it?
But
It's
you've
not-
left Reform, have you?
No, I haven't left Reform. I still
You're
work
not
in
their
part for
social
Reform.
media.
Not their social media.
Why not?
Well, because I wasn't doing well enough. No, I'm joking. No, it was just a change in leadership, a change in direction.
Because you're a new contributor, we normally get halfway through the press preview and we talk to new contributors about your background. So you were the Reform social media manager. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you're from and whatever.
Yeah, so I got involved with Reform about 3 years ago when we were campaigning in London because I was fed up with lockdown.
And were you before that a professional Dan Dukes impersonator?
That's what everyone says. I mean, maybe I am. Maybe I should take that up as a job.
All right, fair enough.
I mean, that'd be quite an insult to Dan, but...
You were in the Uber Eats scandal in the press last week. What was all that about?
That's it, a couple of weeks ago. It was where I got an illegal immigrant delivering my food, essentially, and it's happening all over the country.
That's right, I interviewed you. I was
You
just
did.
testing if you remember.
Yeah.
Right.
So what else about you? Where are you from? Come on.
Yeah, where are you from, man?
I'm from Winchester.
What are your vital statistics?
Originally, I was born in the Isle of Wight. I now live in London, having lived in Winchester, and I'm working now on the London Assembly holding Sadiq Khan to account, which is really fun. Yeah.
Brilliant.
He just doesn't listen,
Do you remember that dreadful communist David Pugh, who was leader of the Isle of Wight, and his nickname was Putin?
Yes, I've heard.
Remember Putin?
Absolutely hilarious.
He was a communist, that bloke.
Absolutely.
He was officially a conservative, but he was a real socialist.
Yeah, most of them are.
Real socialist.
The Daily Express, it's King Doddy, all smiles from His Majesty in the spring sun. He does look a bit like Ken Dodd. It's not a bad look, or maybe it is. Starmer's 5% council tax rise, shame. Labour has been accused of hammering households in a day of shame as council tax soars by 5%, and they've still got rats everywhere. So what's all this about?
Yeah, it's astonishing, and a bit of work done by Reform today shows that actually it's not only Starmer raising council tax. Tory councils up for election this year have, on average, over the last 5 years, risen council tax by 23.5%. So look, this may be slamming Labour, and Labour, of course, are disastrous with the economy, but the Tories are just as bad. It's one high-tax uniparty. It's just a disgrace.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
And then tell us a little bit about the London Assembly. Somebody has said we need the trigger warning because Sadiq's being mentioned. Look, I've always said Sadiq's a bad person. I've said most people in politics are not bad people, but he's a bad person because his motivation in politics is to create division and hatred. But tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Actually, that's interesting. So today we had an exchange where we mentioned the chant "From the River to the Sea," and we asked Sadiq whether it was anti-Semitic, and he just refused to comment. And then he accused us of seeking
That's
division.
all he does. I remember there was the Reform guy at the Assembly said, "Let's all work, forget about our parties to stop all this stabbing at kids." And he goes, "I will not work with the Reform Party, even to prevent stabbings with children."
It was astonishing, and I don't think it surprised anybody, but it went everywhere because it was just, to people who don't know Sadiq Khan, perhaps it was absolutely
and the amazing thing is about Sadiq Khan, people will assume that if somebody stood up and said, "Look, this is about saving children from being murdered on the streets, let's put our party differences aside," Sadiq would hit the roof. Because there's no doubt he would much rather children died on the streets than work with the Reform Party.
That's what he said.
Well,
and to be fair, he said that. Yeah, you're right.
That's perhaps what he was alluding to. Yeah, I mean that's what he said. So he speaks for himself.
I mean, when you talk about the From the River to the Sea, I remember last week all the cities around the world, like Paris and everywhere, were putting on an orange light for the Bebas kids. He didn't do that. He had holy month of Ramadan lights. He did that light. No mention of that.
Yeah, that's what we asked about actually, and he just came back with a sort of convoluted, technocratic.
I have to say one thing, and you know what, I'm going to ask you. You're not a spokesman for Reform at the London Assembly, but I will say one thing. Will Reform UK commit to something which I think is important? On those occasions when Lent, Easter, Christmas clash with Diwali or Ramadan or Hanukkah, are we going to commit that Christmas and Easter come first in a Christian country?
Well, we are a Christian country. I don't know whether Reform are going to commit to that, but we're a Christian country.
I mean, the lights at the moment are for Ramadan. Now, I appreciate that it's both Ramadan and Lent, but I'm afraid it is a Christian country. And just in the way that I accept that my Christian denomination is not the one that's established, Asher accepts his religion, assuming you believe...
It's a Church of England country. That should be the priority. That's what keeps our culture as it is.
Quite right. We're a Christian country, and that should be respected. And it's not too often. It's absolutely too often. It's not.
And
respected.
I'll tell you something else which I thought was a disgrace. And just to be clear, I mean, I don't want to sit here and over-egg the pudding, but Jewish friends of mine, not him because he's a bit more robust, but we're extremely upset, obviously, by what happened on the 7th of October when they decided not to turn on the Hanukkah lights that were paid for by the London taxpayer. I don't know if it was the London Assembly, but certainly by the London taxpayer in some way, shape or form, when they decided not to turn them on because they were going to be vandalised. Once again, we said, get the vandals and boot them out of the country.
Absolutely. I'm sure you'll agree that basically Jewish people have been completely failed by the political establishment in London and in the country. 87% of them think that the political establishment has failed them in this country since October the 7th, and I would concur with that. It's been a disgrace.
Well, if you've got kids, it's a great worry, what's the future going to hold?
Walk around and get probably hurt in London now, or hit, on the way to school, absolutely, probably going to get hurt.
There was that stupid thing with that police officer. By the way, they had a go at the police officer. Asher disagreed with me, but I felt they were wrong to have a go at the police officer. What he said was, look, you are openly Jewish, i.e. you're wearing a skull cap, walking through a Palestinian protest, which was in the street. I mean, by the way, there'd been about 3 per week for about 8 months or something. So at no point did anybody say, hey, hang on a second, lads, we've had enough. But anyway, they said you'll be arrested for breach of the peace. But that's the bit that people focused on, but they didn't think of the next bit. It's legitimate to arrest somebody for breach of the peace. You move them out of the area and then you de-arrest them. They don't get prosecuted for anything. But then you say, right, the reason we did that is life was in danger because a load of terrorists were walking down the streets. So the immediate action we took was to remove him. The longer term action we're going to take is we're not going to let the terrorists.
But they wouldn't
walk
do
down.
that with the far, you know, what they call the far right. They just go in hard with them.
They would.
That's what they should be doing with these protests, but they'd never do that, would they?
Two-tier policing. Clear example of two-tier policing.
Two-tier judiciary.
Absolutely.
Two-tier mayor. Right, he must be terrified, Putin, because Starmer threatens Putin with severe consequences if Russia attacks UK peacekeepers. I mean, he's sort of writing cheques that can't be cashed. Trump is the only one that can do. I think Trump was on the right line, really. But Prime Minister steps up plans for a 31-nation military force to provide security guarantees to Kiev as part of possible Trump-brokered peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. But US is the only one that has any power. All the other armies are pretty much they've got no men. They've got no power. So it's Putin's not going to be at all worried by this.
I mean, somebody told me a really simple rule of three, which is if you want to deploy 20,000 men, you need 60,000. You need one group who's the 20. It's really easy actually. One group is the 20,000. One that's just come back from being the 20,000 and recuperating, and one group that's preparing to go.
And we've only got 70,000 in our whole of our armed forces, and they're not fighters.
That's the real concern. I personally wouldn't have a problem with troops on the ground peacekeeping if we had an army.
We haven't got any.
That's the point. We haven't got an army big enough. We're only spending 2% of our GDP on defence. It's not sufficient.
Even 2.5% won't be.
No, it needs to be. We need to be heading towards.
Russia
5%.
are spending 60% of their GDP on the war now and on their military.
We need to be heading.
And it's still not going brilliantly.
You know,
it's amazing. It's amazing, actually. I've said this for a long time. Vladimir Putin is probably, of the ones I can think of, probably beyond Ethelred the Unready, probably the worst military commander that I've ever seen. I mean, he makes Stalin look competent, which is a really, really low bar. Had Vladimir Putin been anywhere close to being a competent military commander, Europe would have had real problems.
But on the other hand, we've also got to praise Volodymyr Zelensky and the hard work and the determination he's put into this. Because people said Kyiv would be taken in 3 days, 4 days. It hasn't been. The Ukrainian forces have been absolutely amazing, and Europe's heart should go out to them because they're not only protecting their country, they're protecting the peace in this country and around the rest of Europe.
I have to say, it was amazing. I've made this joke before. You see Volodymyr Zelensky with his phone going, "We're still here, fighting the war." But Vladimir Putin sat next. So Vladimir Putin was on the TV. I mean, that enormous table looked terrible. The staging, the Russians always get the staging wrong, don't they? They either look massively out of date or gay.
Yeah.
Right? There's always one of the two, isn't it?
Or both.
Or come on, Vladimir, let's wrestle with Medvedev in topless. No, let's not do that. But he was talking about how he had all the best military kit sat next to 2 fax machines.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, I can imagine if a fax arrived.
Yeah.
I mean, Ukraine was basically set up as a separate sort of entity in 1945, and in 1950 the Crimea and the other parts of Donbass were added, so it would become more Russian. So it's culturally, a lot of it is Russian, and it only existed from...
I think, though, the big problem with all of this, I always compare it to the Irish Republic. The reality is, whatever way you look at it, after the potato famine, the Irish did not want to be ruled from Westminster. Now, we can sit there all day going, we're one people together, the English, Welsh, Scottish and Irish, but they wouldn't do it. The reality is, the Soviet Union bilged it up. The reason why Latvia, Estonia and Lithuania would rather eat rats in the European Union than go anywhere near the Kremlin is because of the behaviour of the Soviet Union. And that, I have to say, and we'll go to the break now, is a message to everyone, because the reality is that the Slavic people have been ripped in half because of socialism, and that Russia will never recover from it. More next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is a press preview with Andre Walker and Asher Gould, and our guest co-host this evening. Really pleased to have in Matt Stevens for the first time. He's a long-term staffer for Reform, I think we'll probably say. He doesn't speak for anyone other than himself, so we've got to be a bit careful. And Anna McGovern, who, of course, well, you will know very well, has been a long-term contributor for us. Anyway, what's next,
our Daily Star and weather alert, get your sun cream and all that, because it's going to be 21 degrees. Wow, it was 19 or 18 today. I couldn't take it. And the main headline, sod the JFK files, because that's been all released. Our special investigation solves a decades-old Only Fools TV riddle. Triggers broom with the truth. And it says here, 17 new heads and 14 new handles, but yes, it is still the same brush, and that's an exclusive. That's another.
Well, I have to say to you, isn't it true to say that no cell in my body was there the day I was born?
I think so. I've got some of your bones, I think. But,
and so when you go, well, that's me as a baby. Well, it's not really, is it?
It's like Trigger's broom, isn't it? We're all Trigger's broom.
My laptop gets called Trigger's laptop.
Doctor Who, yeah.
Because I'm still using it now. I bought it about 9 years ago. And do you know what I've done? Do you know how technology's not moved forward that much? I've just put better components in every time it's broken.
Just kept it going.
Yeah. I mean, I got it out the other day. The laptop, that is. I got it out on the train, and the bloke next to me went, "When did you buy that antique?" And I thought, if members of the public are having a go.
It's wind-up, isn't it, as well? There's Mike Graham's out there. You put your trousers on, Mike. It's too hot. No, he'll be on in a few minutes if you're listening in the morning. There's a custard slice crisis. Doesn't say any more, but custard slice. So go out quickly, clear the shelves of the custard slices, because there's going to be a never mind bog roll. Well, you need it after, but yeah. And
do you know what I do at my house?
What?
Honestly, this is the easiest thing ever, right? But oh God, how middle class does this sound? I just get a bag of frozen croissants from the shop. They're about like £2 for 10 or something, right?
That's good
value. And just your air fryer for like £100 or something.
Where'd you get them from?
Well, just a Tesco, Sainsbury's, anyone, all of them.
They all do them.
And you just stick it in your freezer, 2 of them in, from frozen.
If you buy a fresh one, it's £1 for one, isn't it?
They're a rip-off.
No, you're right. So it's these little hacks that keep you watching us. You know, it's educational, this show.
By the way, I know they always say this, but air fryer, right, I know we're all the same.
They're brilliant.
We all love them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're great for like cheese on toast, sausages, chips.
Or do you KFC delivery. You know KFC is no longer any good. Right, you can make it good by sticking it in the air fryer.
That's true. And the next day. And more than you need to know about dolphins. That's the Daily Star. Right, let's go on to the Metro.
What was it Alan Bastard said about dolphins? Just because they smile a bit, you forget they're not fish. Right?
Yeah. Classic. Yeah, exactly. They're not fish, though, are they?
No, they're mammals.
They're men. Police target top 100. This is not right. Violence against women. Yeah, it's not right. Most dangerous men ranked, tracked and jailed as force vows to make capital safer. Well, that's a good idea. Police have become relentlessly tracking the 100 most dangerous predators targeting women and girls to put them behind bars and tackle the epidemic of violence highlighted by the Metros This Is Not Right campaign.
However, let's just be clear. They've identified the people who are most dangerous to women in the capital. Now, this is where I think there's two-tier policing. Let's list the names. Adam Balfe, Aaron Bennett, Jason Flynn, Lewis Collins, Kenneth Elza, and somebody else. Right. There was no name of anybody who's of Pakistani descent on the list. No. Apparently, grooming gangs are taking place everywhere in the country apart from London.
Yeah, and also there's this new series that everyone's going on about on Netflix, which is basically it's a white kid playing it, but it was based on right. It was a white guy. Who
don't argue with him. They can't hear him.
Yeah, I'm just being corrected.
I did. To be fair, I did read about that online.
So, what's your views on that, Anna?
No, I haven't. I need to watch it, but I've heard lots of mixed reviews about.
No, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Right, because we want to know what Netflix adolescence is and what the racist argument is. Why don't I wait to get a briefing from my producer, which we will do right now, and we'll be back in a moment after the break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes. Oh, I was going to come back.
No,
I was going to come back and mention this thing. This is the press preview with Andre Walker, Asher Gould. I'll let you do the next one. Really sorry. With Matt Stevens and Anna McGovern. So actually, what's being said is that there's a conspiracy theory here about this adolescence TV show. Because actually, what basically we've worked out is it is a white 13-year-old kid who has killed a girl because he's one of these incels, you know, these sad individuals who read Guns and Ammo magazine and eat sugar puffs all day in their underpants, right? It's one of those. But everyone's kicking off because they're saying, well, they've deliberately cast a white kid rather than a black kid. It's racism. Now, apparently it's in a white town, is it?
Well, I think the point here is, are white boys the perpetrator of knife crime in this country predominantly? No. In London, for example, it's 56% of knife crime is committed by 13% of the population, young black boys.
Other black boys.
But the message here, I think, is that white boys, young white working class boys, are falling for these online people like Andrew Tate because they're so forgotten about by the establishment. You know, only 1/3 of white working class boys pass maths and English at GCSE.
What worries me? What worries me is this. I feel like, and by the way, I literally believe that you people are the solution, right? So I'm not having to go at you, but I believe that white young people are being pushed into the arms of these extremists because they're being discriminated against.
Because they're being discriminated against by their political establishment.
I mean, they're horribly. I've said this before today. In fact, I think I've said it every week for about the past 3 months. But I used to be a contributor on the BBC, and they used to phone me up and they used to go, Andre, you're brilliant. We love you. Do you know anyone black who's as good as you?
It's astonishing, and that's
so they're openly racially discriminating.
And they won't put, you won't get many white guys in adverts unless it's about, sexual harassment. That Sadiq Khan. Oh, mate, it's always a white guy. Well, a lot of them I've seen, it's a white guy, and then there's another guy, saying, "Hey, mate, don't," you know what I mean? It's sort of demonising the white working class.
White working class boys are constantly demonised in this country.
Well, they're the lowest, aren't they, in education?
At what point? Just a matter of interest, and I know this is extremely provocative, and I'm a right-wing contributor. At what point, when you have, say, Sadiq Khan and the majority of his administration are non-white and they discriminate against white people, that we can't start using the word apartheid?
I think that's a strong term. I think that's a really strong term. But, yeah, particularly in education, only 1/3 of white working class boys pass maths and English. There's a real problem there. We've got to address it. Whether terms like that are useful or not, I don't know.
Well, it's useful because you're being deliberately provocative and deliberately needling them. But if what you've done is effectively created an ethno aristocracy and said, well, one race can never do any wrong and one race can never do any right.
Well, the court system, look what they were trying. Was that not a part of?
That was definitely apartheid. There's no doubt when they say that black people should receive lighter sentences, what they're really saying is white people should receive harsher sentences. That is definitely apartheid. There's no doubt.
That is two-tier justice in this country, discriminating against white people. It's a disgrace, and let's hope that they U-turn on it. But I'm not holding my breath at all.
But they deny it, and then they make it official.
But they've got worse today, haven't they? With this announcement that prisoners can pick their own gender.
It's insane. You can't pick your own gender. If you've got a penis, you're a man. If you've got a vagina, you're a woman. It's simple.
You heard it here first. That's an exclusive.
Well, I mean... yeah, got it. Let's move on. And talking of Nicola Sturgeon...
Yeah, Nicola Sturgeon. Or is it Jimmy Crankett? No, it's Jimmy Crankett. The former Scottish First Minister speaks outside her home after she was cleared following an investigation into the SNP's finances. So it was her mum's touring bus. Her estranged husband, Peter Morell, appeared in court yesterday charged with embezzlement.
I just wonder when she's going to tell us the other bit of the I've left my husband story. Just
where is that nice bus anyway?
Just wondering.
And just another one in the Telegraph, we went too early. RAF offers to keep skies safe over Ukraine. British fighter jets. We haven't got any pilots anymore, have we? Or they're no good, apparently, because of the targets, what we were talking about earlier. The Telegraph understands that military planners discussed sending British Typhoons to provide air cover for troops in Ukraine during a meeting at Permanent Joint Headquarters in Northwood, London yesterday. What happens when we accidentally, shoot something in Russia, or one of the Russians shoot down one of our typhoons? Are we going into World War III?
Although, in fairness, I think I think a Turkish NATO jet shot down a Russian jet, didn't they, when they strayed into their area? I mean, the Typhoons are a pretty good platform. We took the mick out of them for absolutely years when we called them what they called the Eurofighter, and it just was. But when they finally delivered them, the big advantage of the Typhoons is they all integrate together, and so what you can do is you can put up multiple squadrons. And I think the Ukrainians are now using Typhoons themselves, aren't they?
I think they are. I think that's correct. I think they got some from us a year ago.
Belgium,
perhaps Belgium. Yeah, perhaps Belgium.
But it's ironic. Look, what the Ukrainians have done with the Typhoons is keep them back. They haven't gone to the front line simply because they don't want to lose them.
Because they're so valuable as a tool.
Absolutely.
Sure.
But the thing is, that's changing warfare now with the drone. I mean, this war is really... war does always advance technology, but now they're blowing up, £20 million tanks with £3,000, drones. So the whole of warfare is changing. We've got AI robots. Now, soon it will be like robot wars, won't it?
There's no doubt about it. I mean, when we were sending over those toy consignments that I sent, I mean, just so we stay on the right side of the law, when the Ukrainians intercepted the toys and stole them, they were DJI high-definition drones. What they then did was attach grenades to the bottom of them and used iPhones, and they were just controlling them.
And now they've got guns on them, and they're really advanced.
Yeah, what they would do is they would put, say, 20 drones in the air, fly them above Russian tanks, let go of these grenades. It was crazy.
And that's
anyway, just to be very clear, I had no military export licence, therefore the drones were sent to primary schools. If they were stolen on the way, that was simply not my fault.
Yeah.
Not my fault.
Off the back of a lorry. But the Russians have also developed their drone technology, so they're also getting...
Well, the
more
Chinese
advanced,
drone industry is crazy good at the moment because of this.
Cheryl Jacob says, if we fail to value masculinity, of course boys will turn toxic. Page 14, can't go at page 14, but what's your view on that? Are we failing to value masculinity? Is it toxic femininity?
20% of little boys in schools in America are on Ritalin.
Oh, wow.
Because they're displaying behaviour that's deemed unacceptable, or could it be normal?
No, I think what we're seeing, especially in schools as well, is just boys being demonised just for being boys. And this is an increasing trend that we're seeing, and it's almost like they should be ashamed of themselves for being a man. It should be discouraged, and I don't think that should be the direction.
But apparently this Andrew Tate character, I've genuinely never watched a single word that he said.
I don't want to.
But apparently a lot of teenage boys, the reason they find it funny is almost the reason why I find Donald Trump funny, which is... we're sick of hearing it now, and somebody's standing up and giving it the other way.
Well, look, it's because they've been so forgotten about, and there's finally a voice that what they see as standing up for them. I think Andrew Tate's a vile man.
Without being gratuitous, what are the sort of things he says? He makes jokes about objectifying women.
I mean, there's lots of charges he's got, which we won't go into, but he's been accused of trafficking people, etc., etc.
Oh, right, so he really is a robber.
He's a really, really nasty man. But boys fall for him because he stands up for them and he says, I'm on your side, like nobody else will.
Yeah.
He runs the Hustlers University. Is that part of the...
I think that's part of this online nonsense. Where he makes boys pay money and then they get all these silly tips about how to behave in front of women inappropriately. It's just all an appalling...
But he's sort of... There's problems with him getting back into America, even though he's an American. But all these charges seem to be being dropped. Was it a bit of lawfare on him? Were they making up stuff about this?
Certainly not. I've seen... So there's clips all over social media of him mistreating women, and have a look if you're in doubt about his charges.
Yeah. It's... I mean, look, I've got to be honest with you. One day... when we put the College of Policing on trial, they will have to concede that when they said let's suppress free speech in order to protect our nation from violence, that what they will actually have achieved is the complete opposite. I keep making this point. If you believe the College of Policing are correct, that hurty words lead to Holocaust, then all you have to do is rehearse the following. Go out on your local street tomorrow on a soapbox and start saying all ginger people are a threat to British national security. If the College of Policing are right, then over time you will develop a crew of people who are deeply concerned about ginger people, who will develop their own political rules, who will begin campaigning politically for the banning of ginger people. There will be a military wing of that group set up, which will commit terrorist atrocities against ginger people, and in the end, ginger people will be gassed. Now, The reason the College of Policing has never cited an example of this ever happening is because it's garbage. Adolf Hitler didn't stand up in 1941 going, I'll be honest with you, I quite like Jewish people, but now everyone's been kicking off. All of these genocides happen in secret. They're in places where you prohibit free speech, not where you allow it. It's garbage.
Free speech is absolutely essential to democracy. Without free speech, democracy crumbles and we have a crisis.
Should we adopt the American, First Amendment? Or a similar, same sort of thing?
I'm not sure on that. That's an
Because I think, they took our system and made it better. Shouldn't we start adopting stuff from
I say
them?
firmly no. Because what it does is it hands more powers to the judges. What we've got to do is we've got to reduce the judicial power of the judges, reduce the de facto judicial power of the police, abolish the quangos and return power to Parliament. Frankly,
well said.
When does the local election start? Frankly, with you lot running it.
Well, yeah, but they've banned it, haven't they? They've banned the elections. By the way, you were just talking about dolphins. It was lovely to see the dolphins greet the 2 astronauts. Did they do that? They were probably Russian spy dolphins because they're trained. Putin trains them. Don't trust dolphins.
OK, if you are listening on Friday morning, thank you so much for listening to the press preview. Mike Graham is going to be on just in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. I will see you at the same time next week. Until then, take it away, Mike.
Thank you.
For those of you still on Thursday night, this is Andre Walker and Asher Gould, and we're going to be taking your calls once again on the same number in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. You two hanging around? No, they're not hanging around.
Oh, we've got two guests. Have you got hair extensions? Someone wants to know. They say you look beautiful, and they want to know if you've got.
It
looks natural to me, I think.
Are they hair extensions?
Well, yeah, they are hair extensions.
They are.
Thank you,
You
listener.
can't tell.
Well, it wasn't the listeners that guessed you had hair extensions. Right? That would be. It's not bloody Uri Geller, right? Okay. Thank you so much to Matt Stevens. Thank you so much to Anna McGovern, Lois Perry, and Sir Roger Givolb. He's not got an
Doctor. He's a doctor, Roger Givolb.
They're up.
But don't get any medical advice off him.
Yes. Okay. People kept writing in about gout and scabies. Anyway, he's not a medical doctor.
He's good on scabies.
Okay. So we will be back just in a couple of moments.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, it's the Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. Do you know what I'm going to do? Let's just get straight to the calls. We've got 2 slots available, 0344 499 1000. And Paula is in Halifax. Paula, you're on talk.
Hi, Andre. Hi, Ash.
Hi, Paula. What's up?
Just the usual.
Well, I don't know what that is, so why don't you tell us?
Well, my mum's got a brain tumour.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
So what's happening at the moment? Because is she getting good care?
Oh, it's absolutely been shocking, Ash. Absolutely shocking.
Why?
She's got home care.
Yeah.
They're coming in. She's got a keypad outside of the door with a number thing where the carers can let themselves in, and then get the key and let themselves in, and then she says to me, Mum, what would you like doing? Well, my mum said, I want my washing putting on me clothes off. Oh, we don't do that.
Mm. And are some better than others? I've heard sort of anecdotal evidence, like some are great and some are just...
Yeah. My mum said this particular girl is really lovely. But
I'll tell you what I found, and obviously I'm not talking about your mother in this case, but when my grandmother died, and there was a knock on the door during the wake at her house, and the woman said, hello, I'm here to see Maria. Went, oh, she's dead, this is the wake. And she went, oh, I'm her carer. Nobody told me. And she came in, my mum whispered to her, she's only after 20 quid. Give her a cup of tea. Because, I mean, obviously she would have known the woman's dead, wouldn't she? She's literally just, she's shown up. But apparently what they do is, and watch out if you've got an elderly relative that dies, they say, right, Mrs. Jones, you go to this awakes this day.
Can I just interrupt you, Andre?
Yeah.
It's not a laughing matter.
Well, it was on that occasion.
No. So what are you going to do about it? Because are you visiting her?
Online.
Are you visiting your mother? I know you have trouble getting there, but how often are you speaking to her every day, or can you?
Oh yeah, of course I do, Andre. Of course I do.
So what should be done about all this care in the community? Because it doesn't seem to be working very well.
No, it's not working well at all, Andre.
It's because it's spread too thinly on people that probably don't need stuff. This is what my point is. If we didn't have all people that don't need it, there'd be enough money to help the actual people that really do need it.
That do need it, yeah.
Yeah.
And it really upset me mum, because she just said, oh, could you put my washing on my clothes off? And she went,
yeah,
that's not in our job description.
But nobody takes pride in the work anymore, do they, when they're trying to look after people?
Just going through the motions.
I looked after old people all my working life.
Yeah.
I've worked in so many nursing homes, and I've always gone above and beyond.
But we live in a different society, you know. We used to live in a high trust society, you know, and we'd live in a very low trust society.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Thanks, then, Paula. Thank you. Let's go to Mark in London. Hi, Mark.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Yeah, going back to the Somali immigrants. Now, I'm not going to mention council that I'm under. I can do if you wish. But our kitchen floor was repaired last year by the council. The whole lot is breaking up. But there's an house across the road that was empty for 2.5 years, and we're talking a 3-bedroom house.
Yeah.
We knew the lady that used to live there. She died, and it was left empty by the council for 2.5 years. And then they spent 6 months on putting a extension on the back, a loft conversion, and then a whole Somali family moved in. The woman had you know what you get, crutches, like if you got a broken leg or that.
Yeah.
She had the one crutch. She used that for about 3 weeks. They got a nice fancy people carrier. One of the kids have got their own car. And it just makes me so.
Well, it's because I've been in trouble with my bosses for saying this before. The problem, Mark, is that you're an idiot. And the reason that I say that is because muggins over here and muggins over there in your house are the people that pay for all this. And so we are the idiots that have allowed this to develop, where, you know, you can't get a bloody floor, but somebody else can get a people carrier. Oh, my back's gone. Has it really? Get a job, you lazy git. It's just not, you know, it's just, but we let him away with it.
Yeah, I know. And it's the mad thing about it. Now, both my children are grown up. They both went to university, Brunel and Kingston University.
Yep.
Both got first-class bachelor's degrees. My daughter's had to buy a property because she wasn't allowed on the council housing waiting list.
No,
nor is my son. And
why not? I thought if they lived with you, it was effectively a hereditary position.
No, it doesn't work like that anymore.
Oh, she wanted to move out, didn't she? Is what you're saying?
Well, the thing is, she wasn't allowed to go on the waiting list.
So what happens? So Mark, let's just remind our viewers that council houses are supposed to be there for people who can't afford to live in their own community. Your children were declined, and someone from Mogadishu moved in instead.
Bingo.
Well, 72% we said earlier of Somalians are in social
so let's just read those statistics to everybody.
Was it in the Ealing area?
No, I'll tell you. It's in Putney.
Putney, oh yeah.
Oh, Putney. So lovely, and if they get right to buy. So let's give you some of these statistics. Let's just see if I can go back to where I was before. I don't know how you do it on this system. Anyway, look, it's 47.1% of Somalians are living in social housing. 95% of them have lived in rented accommodation or social housing since arriving. So only 5% have come to the United Kingdom and bought a property of any description. And I think it was something like, 70% are on...
72% are in social housing. But, they all go on about, I'm not just specifically Somalians, but people who come into this country, it's all a net benefit. When you look into it, it isn't a net...
Apologies,
takers.
I think I misspoke. The 47% is people who are on benefits. Right. And so basically half of them are economically inactive.
And, 1 in 5 people of working age are economically inactive and not even seeking work. 1 in 5,
yeah,
20%.
Although they're from Somalia, they're also, whether this makes a difference or not, it does to me, but they're Muslim. And I'm getting fed up with everywhere.
I mean, the 1 in 5 that are working age it counts all people. British
I think at the end of the day, it depends what you're talking about when you're talking about Somalian Muslims. If you're talking about a benefit that is supposed to go to the local community, it's supposed to be the poor of the community. A Muslim from Mogadishu doesn't sound very similar to a Christian from Putney. It's about as far away as it could be. And therefore, I also think there's something to be said about culture. I've always said that I had a grandmother who's Irish and a grandmother who's Greek. Clearly easier for my grandmother who's Irish to integrate in the United Kingdom than it is that my grandmother is Greek. Had my grandmother been from Eritrea, it would have been harder still. And I think also charity begins at home. I believe in the biblical view that charity should be in concentric circles. You start with your family, then your wider family, then your community, then whatever. Yeah. And ultimately, if there is enough money to support people from Bangladesh or Mogadishu or wherever, then that should only be because we've got enough housing for our own people. And there's so much surplus that it doesn't matter anymore. But actually what we're doing is throwing our own people out on the streets in order to bring people to our country.
And they were going to change that, but Angela Rayner scrapped that, didn't she? She scrapped that because we were going to give priority to our own people, but she thought, oh no, can't do that. That'd be terrible.
Yeah, what's annoying is you walk around like you go shopping or anything like that, and you've got ex-servicemen sleeping on the streets where the country they were fighting in for those people are over here in the social.
Well, we've got to pay for their tennis lessons, haven't we? These people that have come over, it's got to have tennis lessons, driving lessons, 4-star hotels, mobile phones.
I thought it was also interesting, and I've noticed this. I don't know exactly where David Starkey lives in Bloomsbury, but I was the chairman of the University of London Union, which is on Mallet Street near Senate House. So, but he's right. All the local shops in that area are all low-value, cheap local shops, where the flats are £1 million each and the houses are like £5 million each. Yeah. The reason is because they're all filled with council tenants. Yeah. And so what you have to do, if you want to get a job in this city, you have to take a train and go past all of the wealthy areas occupied by people who are unemployed. Marvellous.
And not from here.
There's something else I just remembered. If you're Muslim, you don't pay bedroom tax or that because they class that as a room for you to pray in. So why do they need so many bloody...
I've no
We'll
idea.
have to check that out.
I've no idea. Let's put a health warning on that because I don't know if it's true. But Mark, thank you so much for your call. Anyway, let's go to John in Glasgow.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi there. I just wanted to speak about Broken Britain.
Yep.
My partner is a classroom assistant, and half of the children at our school have actually got learning difficulties now, like ADHD, autistic, and that. I just want them to actually have. They put these things on them. And I say, oh, you've
It's
got
encouraged, isn't it? It's almost like a badge of honour in some ways.
Back in the day when I was at school, well, there wasn't such a thing as that, and there was not at all whatsoever.
There was just dyslexia in my day. That was the new one that came in. But that was it. It was ever since they got rid of capital punishment at school. That really, you know...
Corporal. They never hung people
that,
at school.
And that.
Never hung people
Yeah.
at school.
They did it mine.
My son is I'm kind of in confrontation with my ex partner, right? But it's like she's actually kind of pushing my son to actually have ADHD and
yeah, but the problem is if 80% of the country have claimed some sort of a disability and you're the 20%, you've got to get on board, baby. Right, you know what I mean? I know it sounds terrible, but everybody's a deserving cause now.
But that's the Broken Britain thing, though, is it not?
Well, this is why shoplifting's taken off. You know, people are going, well, they're getting away with this. Why shouldn't I do that? You know what I mean? This is how it snowballs, and eventually it will break. And that's what needs to happen, to be honest.
My son is like that. He can sit in front of a computer all day.
Well, that's what they do to kids, aren't they? Playing on their Tamagotchis. And...
He's actually been... She wants him to be diagnosed with ADHD or ADHD.
ADHD. Yeah, they just keep adding initials and stuff. Thanks anyway, John. Russ Hubbard. Let's go to Steve in Warsaw.
Good evening, Andre. Good evening, Ash.
All right, man.
I've been listening to about immigration and all that.
Earwigging, eh?
Tell me, who is responsible for allowing all these people to come into this country?
Well, Boris Johnson was in the government when they started letting 1 million a year. It was about 50, 60,000. I think 1 year, but it was only about 2018. About 300 came on the boats. But even, you know, legal ones, it's like 1 million, 1.6 million actually gross. 1 million. I think they found one kebab house had sponsored 400 people or something ridiculous like that. And they bring family members, so it's unbelievable. You can bring and university visas.
I think there's an increasing view of who destroyed the British immigration system. There's an increasing view that the answer may be US aid, and that is to say that, and if you're watching the show earlier, this will make a little bit more sense. Elon Musk has discovered that a lot of the wrongness that's gone on in the world recently has been funded by the US Overseas Aid Department. Basically, they've been doling out money. They didn't know who they were doling it to. As an example, the major campaign to force transsexualism across in the UK, we now know was funded by US aid. And Stonewall now virtually insolvent. It may well be, and I don't know, that the people that are coaching foreigners to come to Britain, telling them how to pretend to be a school child, telling them how to break the law when they come in, may well have been funded by US aid through the Open Society Institute, which is managed by George Soros. Maybe.
But then our system backs them up by saying, no, we must not question this person's age, even though they look 43. Put them in this school with the children, and then, you know, you end up with terrible
that's
stories.
right. You have the under-10s football, and they've all got to have a shave before they play, and the blokes are almost as bad.
The thing is, it's too late now to do anything about all this. I mean, because at the end of the day, you know as well as me, all these people want to come in here, they're parasites.
Yeah. They don't.
Well, not all of them, but a lot of them.
They don't want, and many of them don't like Britain, which is the critical point. Anyway, let's go to a break. When we come back, we'll have Lois Perry.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Roger Gould has been in touch every day for 3 months trying to talk to us about economics, and I'm really sorry I haven't had the opportunity to bring him on. But the economy is in a nightmare. Growth is going absolutely nowhere. Dr. Roger Gould has run all sorts of businesses. He's got a doctorate in law from the United States of America, and I think knows a little bit about what's going on. Roger, how worried should we be?
Pretty worried, I think, because the Labour government keeps talking about growth. I've never heard anyone say growth so many times, and yet, as we all know, everything they're doing is anti-growth, anti-business, high taxation, just spoil everything, which is any incentive to
Roger, do you agree with David Starkey that we're now in a situation, you may not have heard it earlier, because I know you're quite busy. Do you agree with David Starkey that we're in a position now where the system will inevitably collapse? Because what's happened is the government is just run out of money. Its whole strategy now is just completely mad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the whole system will collapse. They'll just print some more money. Because that is what governments do. But what we certainly won't have is growth and prosperity. Last night, I spoke at a gathering in Parliament, and there were quite a few very, very wealthy, powerful people there, and it really opened my eyes. I had no idea so many very rich people are leaving the country, but these people were telling me how so many of their friends are leaving or have left their spouse and kids here because the schools are great and they, blah, blah, blah. But themselves, they only come here for 90 days because they're scared to death of the way Starmer and company are running things.
Well, they're killing the economies, aren't they? That's what they're doing. But I mean, it's the rich that will survive this because you'll have assets, you'll have property. So the printing money, which is basically a reverse tax, it's just stealing money off people. But if you're rich and got assets and properties, you're laughing.
Well, I mean, if you're rich, you survive wherever you are.
Yes.
Well, not if you've got cash in the bank. You need to have it in something, don't you? So that rises with the inflation.
That's true. Yeah, true that. But, we've got 68 heading for 70 million people, and most of them are not living at the standard that they should be living at for a country as old and sophisticated as this.
We're 26th per capita GDP. We're below some African states now. I mean, we still think we're a great country. We're almost third world now. Well, we are, and so you look at Birmingham at the moment, and the rubbish is rats everywhere. That's because they're on strike, but also the council's bankrupt.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's pathetic, and the fact, this is, as I've written and said over and over again, this is the least qualified government that I think has ever existed, perhaps anywhere. None of these people have ever worked a real day in their life. They've never grafted. They've never struggled to make wages for the month to keep their staff and keep their business. They haven't a clue. And unlike Trump, who a businessman himself, nevertheless brings in Musk, these guys don't bring in anybody. They're making these decisions themselves, Rachel Reeves and the rest of them, about things that they barely understand.
But are they in denial? Because, I mean, she's all about growth, and yet she's taxing companies, driving people out who are the money.
They are 100% Egyptian.
Yeah.
They are
denial.
in denial, yeah.
So how's it going to all end, Roger? You're the economist. Does it all come collapsing down? Is that what needs to happen? Or is it just going to get worse and worse?
Yeah, my own personal theory, it's a bit off the wall, but it is that Trump is going to, Britain's very close to his heart. He's got big interest here, and his mother was Scottish. He is going to befriend Starmer and the Labour Party, and he's going to move them in the right direction. And if they don't let him do that, then I'm sure they'll find some way to force them out.
Well, they've just cut the 20,000 credit cards that apparently the civil service are just spending on, like, Gucci shoes when they're abroad. Apparently 660 million in a year. These people are just splashing out our cash like it's water. I mean, it's all basically corruption, isn't it?
A lot of it is corruption. It's quite amazing, and the corruption in the Labour Party that we've seen actually outdoes anything the Tories ever did, and that was beyond belief.
Well, I mean, £18 million penthouse that his son needed for his GCSEs. Yeah. Meanwhile, other people are in private schools.
I'm not talking about Trump and details like that. I'm saying on a more macro, on a broader level, he's going to say, I think, to Starmer, all right, knock off this suppression of free speech nonsense and stop this and stop that and do this and do that, or else.
Well, it's already affected American companies, this online safety bill. Apple have withdrawn some of their end-to-end encryption because they said we're not prepared to agree to what you're demanding. And Trump did say, you know, we may even put sanctions on if you're going to affect our big American tech bros.
Absolutely. And look at the giant deals, 300 mil, 650 million, of big-name companies that canceled their deals in the UK. Because of what's going on.
Well, they cancelled out the Gigafactory, didn't they, up in Scotland? That was Musk. I mean,
and then
Starmer cancelled his invite. Now he's sort of backtracking, isn't he, doing the old reverse?
Yeah, and then these Looney Tunes go out and they get on television and they go, growth. We're all about growth.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, but surely they must know, or do they actually not know that this?
No,
you know, taxing companies.
I don't think they know. They've had no experience base.
Bringing in employment laws where the person from day one has rights. I mean, no company's going to bother with this country. You'd have to be mad.
I fear a lot of businesses are going to feel that way. They're going to feel, you know, look, we're sophisticated business people. We plan 5 years in advance. We know what's going on. These people are not serious people. They don't look like they know what they're doing, and so they're not going to invest.
No,
and they can't see that. You're right. They can't see it.
Do they care?
But they must see it in the figures when it's dropping every day.
They have no experience base, and they're not listening to people who are telling them otherwise. Do they care? That's a good question, Andre. I think probably not. No.
Is it because they're living in this, you know, liberal bubble and they just go to these... This is what you hear all the time. They just want to be amongst their friends and this is where they get popular.
And because they think their just cause of redistributing wealth and socialism is better than our nonsense. And C, because they have all these powerful figures behind them telling them that they're right and, you know, cheering them on and all this stuff. And is there
an element where they don't value the success of the United Kingdom? They value something that they see as much more of a global community. Do you see what I mean?
Some of them are definitely, you know, WEF people. With
well, Starmer said that. They said Davos or Westminster are definitely Davos. I mean, in the Telegraph today it says growth forecast halved in blow to Starmer. The OBR, Office for Budget Responsibilities, downgrade will be embarrassing for PM and Rachel Reeves. The official economic growth forecast for 2025 will be halved next week in a blow to Sir Keir Starmer. The Telegraph understands the OBR will downgrade the expected growth rate for 2025 financial year. I mean, surely they've got to accept. I mean, she was always. They've got to accept it.
No. If Trump doesn't get to them first, and Vance and Musk, and say, look, you know, you people need to wake up and now do this, and you know, stay stum about all your nonsense about the other stuff. Just do this, and you'll be all right. If he doesn't get to them first, or they don't listen, then what will happen is exactly what you just described, Ash. They will hit the wall, and there'll be some figures that they can't gaslight about. They'll make up some excuse. Oh, this is because of the Tories, or this is because of pigs in Siberia, or this is because
Liz Truss had to resign, though, but it doesn't seem to work the other way.
No, of course not.
No, because
they're trying the best. They're trying the best, and the new rule, Roger, in British government is it doesn't matter how bad you are. If you've tried your best, that's enough.
Yeah.
It's like being in sports.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And also, we've left out one important element. The public doesn't give a damn anymore. They're so sick of all these people.
I think they've put something in our tea. Anyway, Roger, we've got to go to a break, but thanks for coming on. We'll hopefully get you on much sooner again.
Okay, great.
Nice haircut as well.
And we'll be back with
nice front parlour as well.
We'll be back with Lois Perry just straight after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'll tell you something I hadn't realised. What you've just told me then, Asher. Tell us a little bit about this adolescence. Well, apparently, the story was original. Will you tell me?
Well, I don't know, because we spoke to Chuck earlier, and, it was based, apparently, on a story that was, not a white kid, but, it was, many stories, but specifically there was one it was based on, apparently. Well, apparently not true. Okay.
Well, people are saying that apparently originally the intention was it was going to be a black kid. I don't know. Yeah. But it's amazing. It's amazing how, for the first time ever, a white kid gets a part in a play and nobody complains. There we go. I honestly, can I tell you one thing? I genuinely believe that Britain is a very racist country, and maybe I'm overly paranoid about it because of the racism, but I worry about my nieces and nephews and their future. Because, as I said before, when I worked for the BBC as a contributor, they would regularly phone me up and say, Andre, you're brilliant. Can you find a black person who can do as good as you? Openly. Do I get the job if I can't? No.
And they call it white privilege, and white working class boys are
Actually, it is interesting. I did appear on Newsnight once when basically I pretended to try and find them a black person for 3 days, and when I failed, they said, well, reluctantly we'll allow you to do it instead. But, I mean, they were openly racist.
Yeah.
Somebody saying I should.
There is a black Andre Walker, wasn't there? Do you remember in America we found one?
Do you know what I should have done? Do you know what I should have done? I should have recorded the phone calls, blacked up and gone. I'm not joking. Then said, well, just go. No, I'm just going to play the tape.
Yeah, you should joke.
No, I mean in the context of if they are phoning me up saying we want you, but we want you black, bloody do it. Do it.
I don't think it would go well, but...
I don't care. I'd play the tape openly. I'd play it on Newsnight. I'd say, listen, you racially discriminate against me.
I saw Eddie Murphy play Jewish old blokes in Coming to America in The Barbers, and it was brilliant. He'd grown up in that culture. He played it very well, so I think, sometimes it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, well, the thing that amazed me was that Michael Sheen, who said that only Welsh people should play Welsh people, and then he played Prince Andrew.
Yeah, and Brian Clough and all that, yeah.
Well, basically,
and Sony Blair, but everyone he played wasn't Welsh.
Basically, the idea is if you're a British person, if you're an English person, you must be discriminated against, and the rule will always be whatever is unfortunate to you.
And David Frost, he played.
Anyway, do you remember that? Now for our home and studio audience, but not for our panel. Here's whose house it is.
Lord Grossman.
Here's Lord Grossman. I loved when they changed that. What was it, MasterChef? Lloyd G. Grossman used to go, oh, that's marvellous. And then that new bloke came on and go, that's disgusting. That tastes genuinely vile.
That was the guy with the sock on his willy, wasn't it? So they had to get rid of him. And
What? Gino?
Oh, no. Well, no, he was all... Apparently, socks on willies are very popular amongst cooking people for some reason. But he was encouraged, and then they had a go at him, didn't they?
Oh, is a willy sock popular just in case you drop oil on yourself or something?
It's the worst place to get hot oil on, definitely.
Right. OK, well, let's not talk about it. Look, I've got a stage show in a couple of weeks with Lois Perry. She's on the show now, really excited. Lois, how are you?
I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit poorly.
Why?
But I'm fine. I must have picked up something on the plane, but I'm fine.
What was his name?
The worst place, yeah.
I'm okay.
No, I said, when you said I picked up something on the plane, I said, what was his name?
It's ever since they stopped pumping oxygen because they got rid of smoking.
I haven't got any more room in my diary for any more men, Andre. My dance card is full.
OK, Lois, let me ask you this question. What can we expect in Birmingham on the 28th from the Weekly Woke, Andre and Lois's new show?
Apart from loads of rats everywhere because there's a bin strike.
Well, yeah, there'll be lots of rats, or hopefully not. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be interactive. It's going to be like That Was the Vote That Was, and a bit like Have I Got News for You. It's going to be there's going to be a Wheel of Fortune. We're going to have Lee Anderson because Rupert's out. It's all going to be fantastic.
I think we should say that every show needs to have a beautiful assistant on the Wheel of Fortune, and we're getting Vivian Lee Anderson. Right, she's pretty and good in a fight, which is all.
Absolutely. Well, you can't do better than that, can you?
And where is it? It's in Birmingham, but where is the actual? Have you booked a theatre yet? Where it's going to be?
It's not the venue that we're thinking. It's Reform UK's.
It's a different venue.
Where are you going to have it? Because I know a few of the venues.
Well, you know how they change the names all the time.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what it is. It's called the Utilia Arena, Birmingham.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, but you will
King
have.
Edward's Road. Yeah.
You will have. It'd be. I'll tell you what it used to be called.
Yeah.
Right.
Up near the university. We're just looking into it, man.
Let's see what it used to be.
Please bear with us.
Let's see what it used to be called. Is that one?
Right, oh, it's around the NEC. So, oh, no, is that in town, is it?
It's in Ladywood or Lady Garden or something.
Oh, dear, you don't want to go that way.
Oh, God.
Down the Hagley Road, yeah. Well, it's all right. Yeah. TGI
No
Friday.
young women have a lady garden anymore.
Lady Garden.
They're out of
It's
fashion.
all off now. It's all waxed off.
Anyway, we got you on about the reformed cyber attack, and you're
Yes.
saying it's being driven by Indian bots. This Rupert Lowe Twitter, the
Right,
cyber-
so first of all, let's start from the beginning.
Right.
So first of all, Indian bots. What are two bots that are Indian called? Okay, let's not make that joke. Best ones are done in your head. Okay, but Lois, what has happened with his bot cyber attack from India?
Okay, so I can say this. This is coming from the main man. This is coming from the top. Okay, so and it's also coming from people who know about this stuff. I'm not making it up. It's not a conspiracy theory. This is happening. So
So there's been a cyber attack from the bots in India, and what have they done?
Right. So basically, what they're doing is they're anyone who's doing anything pro Rupert Lowe, replacing Nigel, or anything that's anything that causes division, that we're having thousands and thousands and thousands of likes that are coming from Indian bots.
How do you know that, though? Because there's a lot of people who are on Rupert's side, aren't there?
That's right, but not like hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I mean, Lance Foreman did a tweet last week, which he shouldn't have done, actually. I bollocked him for it, yeah. But he did a tweet, and it got like 500,000 likes or something.
What did he tweet?
So what you're saying is there's a pattern here, which is anyone who says anything positive about Rupert Lowe gets an extraordinarily large number of likes and retweets, but they're from people
as well.
Yeah,
comments.
but they're from people in India.
Yeah, it's fake. A lot.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
It's real, but a huge amount is
Well,
fake.
no, hang on. Asha's question, let me put it slightly differently. So we accept, because I have no reason to doubt you, that these comments are coming from Indian names in India. But what makes them bots? How do we know that?
Well, the fact that the accounts were formed a week ago, or and they've got pictures of people, like really hot women or whatever, like they're completely fake. They're completely fake, and it's being paid for, and it's been coordinated. And who's paying for it? That's what we want to know.
So let's be clear on the central allegation here, which we can all do. I can open up I can open up Twitter now, or probably not Twitter. I can open up Google and say that I want to buy 500,000 retweets for something from Indian bots, and that will cost me about £1,000 or whatever. Yeah. Now, somebody is buying these retweets and comments. Who do you suspect, Lois?
Not Lance Foreman.
No.
Are you accusing Rupert Lowe of illicitly buying traffic?
No, I don't think it's Rupert Lowe. I think Rupert he's not been on social media for very long. I think he's a nice man, and I think he's got a bit carried away. And
in what way is that not accusing him?
I'm not. I don't think he's done it. I think that there's. Look, I don't know who's paying for it. Is the short answer. But put it this way: there's a uni party at the moment, a uni party of Labour, Liberal Democrats, and Conservatives. That suits global interests. Yeah, it could be them coming from anywhere.
Could be China, could be Putin.
Hang on a second. Why not go on to these tweets, look at the fake accounts and see who else they follow, and then perhaps contact those to say, where did you buy your fake followers from? Then buy those followers and see, just do a bit more research into it.
Well, absolutely, and the research is being done by Reform UK Central Office, so it is. It's actually underway. But I mean, it's so ridiculous the amount of likes and retweets and comments. I mean, my tweet that I did defending Nigel the other day was the #1 tweet on Twitter for the whole day, mainly because of the amount of abusive and horrible messages that I got. I got 3,000 horrible messages.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about that, man.
I don't care.
So the #1 most interacted tweet on Twitter UK the other day was you, because people from Rajasthan were kicking off about it. I mean, that is suspicious.
It is suspicious, yeah. It is suspicious. A lot of these accounts were brand new, Andre. They were brand new. They'd only been going for a couple of days or a week.
Oh, look, fake traffic is a thing. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. No, look, please don't think that I am doubting that they are real people who are genuinely angry. But people got carried away and because of the amount of likes, the amount of retweets, the amount of comments.
Yes, but equally, Lois, you and I are friends. In fact, all three of us are friends. But let's just be clear on one thing. The fact that pro-Rupert Lowe people have had a very cack-handed attempt to use Indian bots to promote them could equally be an attempt to discredit them. And what people will not know about this is I can type in the Twitter account of anyone or any tweet and have it retweeted. So if you were, say, one of Nigel Farage's team and you wanted to swamp the popularity of Rupert Lowe, you could conceivably use this tactic.
You could do, but you know, people, bless them, they don't think about double or triple bluffs. They just think about what things look like.
But Rupert Lowe wanted mass deportations. There's a lot of people in this country who support that, and Nigel seemed to be steering away from that. That was the main thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, but there's also been a lot of misinformation. Like, for example, there's been stories put about that he doesn't want to deport criminals that have got dual nationality. That's not true. He's also, you know, that he talked about, you know, the rape gangs not being real and everything. That's not real. No. There's so many pieces of misinformation that are being put out there.
Well, finally, Lois, how do you respond to Heather, who's been in touch, saying the Uni Party now includes the Conform Party?
Ooh.
Well, absolute and complete nonsense. They are the only party committed to leaving the ECHR. They are the only party that want to get rid of all the woke stuff, the net zero stuff. They want people to be able to get on in life. They are not the Uni Party. They are not globalists. I'm not being funny, right? Nigel has 8 blokes with him, special branch, all the time, yeah? None of the other politicians do, unless they're Prime Minister, right? There's people that want him dead, yeah? They don't want him dead because he conforms, okay? Yeah. They want him dead because he wants to change things, okay?
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lois Perry. The one thing I do want to say is clearly Lois is not involved in the operational security of Nigel Farage, so she's merely putting out a number there for to illustrate the fact that there's an ongoing security situation.
Have hot honey and lemon.
We don't want to give out precise numbers or give the impression that we have. We will be back in a couple of moments.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, that was lovely, wasn't it? Absolutely lovely for those of you watching on TV. Okay. Jerry is in Burton-on-Trent. Jerry, you're on Talk.
Go, Jerry.
Morning, guys. You fellas are top dollar. I really appreciate your knowledge and your interviews. You're very, very thorough. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm split because I wanted to talk about these quangos as well as Nigel Farage. But
Go on, do both. Quit, just...
Oh, well, the quangos think, how many people in ordinary, everyday life understand what quangos are all about and their influence and power?
Yeah.
True. I mean more so now.
Well, the net zero thing, climate change is just a quango. They're not answerable to anybody. It's the same with the College of Policing, who were told to get rid of these non-crime hate incident things, and they've refused to.
You've taken the words out of my mouth. Do you know, I became a foster carer many, many years ago, and I believed when I first applied for the role that the local authority had all the control about the vetting process and the assessment and so on, and it takes ages to get approved as a new carer. But later I learned that it's simply charities. They're charities, they're quangos.
They farm it out to the NGOs. It's what they do with all their policies now, and then they have no blame. It's sort of like plausible deniability, which Starmer loves that, and they'd like that before. And this is why he's increased the quangos, 27 more when he said he was going to get rid of them.
But Ash, what's democratic about it?
Well, it's not democratic. It's totally opposite.
But that's its purpose, because remember what they always say, this is too important for politics. What that means is it's too important for democracy. It means that what we're going to do is we're going to hand over to one of our friends who's an expert, and he's going to decide on your behalf. I would tell you that in democratic society, the more important something is, the more it should be democratically decided, not the less.
Well, a lot of this climate change, have actually fingers in pies for a lot of these renewable technologies. I mean, it's blatant.
I mean, isn't it? I mean, it's really truly wicked because of the influence and the power. And if that's not bad enough, they get huge backhanders from government all the time.
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah, you've got that bloke who is funding Extinction Rebellion. He's a really, really poor businessman, but what he's very good at is claiming government subsidies and then giving donations to the Labour Party and Extinction Rebellion to encourage those subsidies to get even bigger.
Are a fraction of what he's getting in.
But you know what we need, guys? We need something like World in Action of old that would delve into all this and expose it, for heaven's sake.
They get rid of all those shows. Like, there used to be a show in the 80s called Rough Justice, which would go over old court cases. Eventually that was got rid of because it was too successful.
Yeah, the
Cook Report, we want to see Roger Cook getting hit with golf clubs. We don't get to see that anymore.
Last week I watched Roger Cook and his hot dog thing.
Oh, yeah, I remember that, yeah. Yeah, he really got stuck in, didn't he?
He just didn't.
To the hot dogs.
He just didn't go for it.
No.
He just went for it.
Why are you hitting me with that axe, Mister? And it was like a very polite way.
I love that. Why are you a mafia crime boss?
Yeah.
And he's got a gun in his face.
He had to put like a wall and cameras around his house. He got so many threats. Unbelievable.
Yeah, don't you think these things are so serious that ordinary Joe public should be made aware of them?
No, I agree with Keir Starmer. These things are so important, they should not be political. They should be taken away from democracy. We should appoint a group of extremists in this subject. It's exactly the same as Starkey was saying about the coronavirus. The group of people who were running the United Kingdom at the time, that committee, had one aim: to stop the spread of the coronavirus. They didn't care about bankrupting the country. They didn't care about...
It was just medical people. There was no economists, sociologists. You need a whole team. It's not just a medical thing, and that's why we're in the mess.
If you want to destroy the lives of children, that's fine, because the aim is to stop the virus spreading. That was their point.
Yeah, but what about the hope not hate crowd? I mean...
No, we can't talk about them. I'm sorry. Can I tell you, they publish a report every year on far right in the media, and they always refuse to put me in.
It's because you want to be in.
I've written to them multiple times. They insist I'm not on the far right. They insist.
Andre, when you was working within the government circles, didn't MPs or ministers feel that this was.
No. Can I be totally honest with you? When I look back at my time in Parliament, I believe it was an overwhelming failure. And I'll tell you why I believe it was a failure. Because you'd go into work every day and you would lobby the ministers to get your issues on the table. You might write parliamentary questions to get stuff, and even stuff being put in the House of Commons library, because you could write to the House of Commons library and say, a brothel's opened up in our constituency. How could we get rid of it? What are the legal powers? And they'd publish a paper on it. You know the one thing we didn't do? Yeah. Idiots. We didn't sit there with every single law going, what the hell are we voting on? And that was our actual job.
Tony Blair brought in thousands of
That was our actual job. But the deluge of legislation. Yeah. But what would happen is all these laws would be brought in. And you know what they told the MPs, the whips? Said, listen, you can stand up and make a speech slagging off the piece of legislation, put in every objection of your constituents and go, but this is the best of a bad lot, so I'm voting for it anyway. And that would be fine. The legislative impact of the House of Commons is virtually zero. And that is bizarre given it's our legislature.
So when you look at all these advisors, and if I remember rightly, it was a long time ago, I think Clegg had something like 50 advisors. And I'm thinking, by the time you got to number 50 for some advice, surely they'd have contradicted each other.
No, that's not the way it works. Because what happens is they silo everything into very, very specific details. So they'll go, who's your advisor on pen regulation? I'm just making this up.
They probably have got that.
And what happens is, because there's so much legislation go through, I'm a nutter who's obsessed with climate change. I write the climate legislation. You're an extremist when it comes to polar bears. Asher's an extremist when it comes to, video game regulation or whatever. And we all come up with our ludicrous ideas. But because I'm so obsessed with mine, I don't have time to read Asher's. And because Parliament is so weak, nobody goes, we're not voting for this, it's all shit. That's what happens.
So a 24-year-old from university, wet behind the ears, is empowered with all that?
Yes. Yes, and of course the other point to make is and this is why I rail against Alan Mabbott and people like that. The Conservative Party and the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats, they all made it put in a situation where not only does the government appoint the House of Lords, but effectively appoints the House of Commons as well. You attempt to elect your local person, Rishi Sunak and his mates, or David Cameron and his mates, or whoever it is, Kemi Badenoch and their mates, although she has pledged to change it. They will pick who your local MP is by deliberately worming their way into the system. And so you've got nobody who's an independent voice. The Magna Carta said things like, we've got to stop the overbearing power of a prince, right, or a king, or whatever it says. I've not read it. But if you were to exchange that for the government, then you would find that the Magna Carta is a significant rebuke on our current system. Because it's basically the person in charge is the Prime Minister on behalf of the King, and they do what they want.
It's a real con. I mean, I know it's some years ago now, but even speech writing for the likes of Prime Ministers is absurd. When they say Thatcher said, this lady's not for turning and all that, he didn't even write the words for him.
Well, can I tell you, in the old days in the House of Commons, you weren't allowed to read out a speech. You were allowed to have some notes. You watch backbench debates now, they all read them out. What they do is they go, I want to say something about, aviation legislation in the aviation bill. And their researchers will just write it all out based on the party line, because what they want to do is they just want to say they made a speech.
It's all a charade, this democracy that they say we've got. I mean, listen to what Dominic Cummings said about the cabinet meetings, where it's all pre-decided. No one actually has any say.
That's absolutely right.
And can I just add, there's something else. People praise Starmer, but if you notice, when he went over to see Trump, I reckon they sat him down like the voice coach that must have happened on Christmas Eve, and made him go through the hoops and trained him how to cross his legs and eye contact. But when it came to his speech, he literally read every single word.
Yeah.
And
that's why it was so terrible.
But when somebody presumably, and it's now often said that an angry Jewish person did it, when he said they must release the sausages, it is said, I don't know if it's true, that was a protest by somebody within the system on the fact that he wasn't even going to read what he was saying.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if that's true.
Well, David Cameron said he was a West Ham fan when he was a Villa fan. He obviously didn't write it, or he forgot. Anyway, thanks, Jerry. Go, Jerry. Let's go to James in Devon.
Hello.
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 Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm a first-time caller. Sorry, go easy on me.
All right.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for calling.
Be easy, man.
Yeah, I was wondering if you want to talk about a free school meal issue.
I'd love to.
Yeah. Where can I get them?
I was just wondering why you arbitrarily decided to stop the state education system at food.
Explain.
Well, do you agree? Should we take out all of the water fountains out of state schools?
No. Why?
Well, why should my tax money go to give children
water
parents who could afford water?
Well, I don't agree with you, water, but I don't think we should be giving them breakfast every day. I don't see why that comes into curriculum.
Well, no,
Just
I
give
mean,
your kid breakfast.
I mean, I disagree on water largely because I think bottled water is madness, and sending children to school with bottled water I think is madness.
I didn't mention bottled water.
Well, you said, well, if the parents have to pay,
water fountain.
No, hang on a second. Hang on a second. When you said parents should pay for their children's own water, I presumed you were going to stick it in a bottle and send it with them, rather than having
You're
to pay.
talking about a tap, basically.
Well, James, can I ask you this? It's clear that you've got a very specific concern about the unfairness of school meals. Rather than talking roundabout terms, why don't you tell us what your complaint is?
Well, my complaint is that we arbitrarily draw the line at food when we give kids free water at the taxpayer's expense. We give them free electricity. We give them free heating through radiators in winter. We give them free roofs. We give
Well, James, let me.
Windows.
Okay, James. I don't disagree with you. What you're saying is, we create a learning environment, and we accept that books are part of that learning environment. A roof is part of that learning environment. Why don't we accept that food's part of that learning environment? Here is my understanding. First of all, I don't particularly disagree with you. But secondly, my understanding of the system is we ensure parents can afford the food, and if they can't, we supply it for free.
Yeah, so why do we give chairs to kids whose parents can afford to provide them with chairs?
They can't bring a chair in every day. And a water fountain, we didn't have them at school in my day. We'd have to put our head under the tap like that. A water fountain's just an upside-down tap with a button.
But hang on a second. James, you're over-egging the pudding. Is the problem here, I object to having to pay for my children's school meals. Is that the problem?
I agree with you there.
Why do you arbitrarily draw?
Oh, I've heard enough of it. Right, thank you. Right, look, no disrespect, but he keeps repeating the same point. But okay, James, it wasn't you. Thanks so much. The answer is, of course, that we try and provide a working in school environment, and some people believe all school meals should be free.
Don't worry about water fountains.
Okay, Liam is in Accrington.
Apparently he's nervous. Don't be nervous, because there's thousands of people watching and all rooting for you. Go on, Liam.
Hi, guys. Well, sorry about James.
Yeah, he got a bit lost. Don't worry.
Yeah, he got a bit lost a bit. What I'm ringing up about is the, how